Welcome to the Veterans Archives podcast, where every veteran story is honored and celebrated. Join us as we delve into the rich histories and experiences of those who have served our nation. You can catch our podcast on all major podcast platforms, as well as every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Reads Across America Radio. At Veterans Archives, we believe your story matters. Visit our website at www.veteransarchives.org to explore more about our mission, discover resources for veterans, and stay updated on upcoming episodes. Connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn to engage with our community. Subscribe, like, and share to spread awareness about our veteran stories. Whether you're a veteran, a supporter, or simply curious about the profound journeys of those who have served, Veterans Archives invites you to listen in, learn, and be inspired. Join us as we continue to honor and preserve the legacies of our veterans. Good morning. Today is Wednesday, October 23rd, 2024. We're talking with Brandyn Mickus, who served in the Michigan Army National Guard. So, Brandyn, thanks for coming in today.
I appreciate you having me.
Well, we're going to start out really simple. I'm going to ask you, when and where were you born?
I was born in Howell, Michigan on January 24th, 1986. I am the millennial.
3 years after I graduated high school, by the way.
Yep.
And for those of you who are listening to this out there right now, Brandyn and I did serve together in the National Guard. We did a tour in Iraq together. But there's a lot about you I don't know. So what was it like growing up in Howell?
Well, actually, I was born in Howell. We lived in Brighton and then moved to Union Lake, Waterford area. Okay. And moved back to Brighton when I was in the middle of third grade. And that's where I say I'm from Brighton, lived there my entire life. I had an awesome childhood. I am one of the few that can, say that I am truly blessed with incredible parents. I had an awesome childhood. All the laughs, the love, all of those things. My mother is an incredible woman. She is the kindest. She's the sweetest. She's the caring one, nurturing. My father is the ex-Marine, hardcore badass. Can do anything, can build anything, fix anything. The problem solver, right? So I was blessed from both standpoints.
Your dad would kick your ass right now if he heard you say ex-Marine.
I know, and you know what? I even have it in my notes. I said, "Don't call him an ex-Marine." I know better, but it was kind of a jab. That's my dude. He's my best friend, so yeah, I know he'd get it.
Well, when he listens to this, he's going to call you.
I know it's okay. It'll be worth it.
Yeah. So what does your mom do? Was she a homemaker or
so they both played the teammate role, and that's one thing that I really took from their relationship into my wife and I's. They both did whatever it took at the time. My dad owned construction companies growing up. He built furniture for Steelcase, and my mom, she worked for mortgage companies. She worked at McDonald's for a while when she was a kid. She worked there with her mom. So that was, wow. Yeah, I know it was kind of cool. Like I got a whole story about my grandmother too. But when my dad was in construction, my mom stayed home. And then he had an accident where a wall that they were building actually gave way and then landed on his ACL. So he was out of work for a little while. My mom went back to work. And so like I had, both experiences with the stay-at-home dad or the stay-at-home mom. And, both of them instilled a lot of different qualities, in work ethic and being a good partner. That was awesome to watch.
Oh, that's very cool. That's a great talk about teammates, right? Mm-hmm. One tags out, one jumps in. Yep. What about siblings? Any siblings?
Absolutely. So I have 2 brothers, 1 sister, 1 half brother. Justin, Chris, Lauren, immediate family members, and it's funny. I mean, like we had like the kick-ass 90s childhood, right? I mean, it was 3 boys and 1 girl. It was pretty much full contact, anything that you could play growing up, whether it was hockey or soccer, you name it. But we were always doing it together. And I think that was kind of the cool thing. I mean, having 4, being a family of 6 and 4 kids, there's never a dull moment. There's always something going on, whether it's just us hanging out, growing up or, when we were in our, I don't know, as soon as we moved to Brighton back when I was probably 10, or 8, I would say. we lived in a subdivision, so there's tons of kids. So our house was always full. My mom was, my mom's incredible to put up with all of us, in the shenanigans. Right. But it wasn't just us. We had a lot of, adopted brothers and sisters, so to speak, just because we were so close with the people we grew up with.
So was it like one of those neighborhoods where everyone's house is everyone's house?
Everyone's house is everyone's house. You knew everyone was because the bikes were laid out in the driveway or the grass. You saw them playing hockey in the street and you just showed up and you played. I think that was the coolest thing about being a kid growing up in the 90s is there was no social media. There was no, so to speak, accountability. You just you went and everyone hung out and it was what it was. And I don't know. I guess you could almost say it was nice being a 90s kid because you had to learn to be comfortable being uncomfortable, right? You put yourself out there and that's the life experiences that you gained was, from those moments of stepping up.
Right. Right. So sounds almost like a, 70s or 80s kid when you're out, you would go out and you would hang out with your friends and you came home generally when the street lights came on and
that is a fact. That's a fact.
Did you guys drink from a hose?
We did, and we're still here to talk about it.
Yeah.
We were smart enough to let it you had to let all that hot hose water get out of there before you took a good sip of the cold stuff from the well.
That's right. I become quite a connoisseur of hose water, actually. So, yeah.
It takes you back.
They should bottle that stuff.
I'm telling you.
So what was school like for you?
School was good. School for me was more of an opportunity to hang out with my friends. I was never a bookworm. I was always a jock, but I didn't subscribe to any specific clique. I hung out with everybody. In early childhood, on the playground, my nickname was Bam Bam. And it wasn't because I was a jerk or a punk. It was because I had an issue with people getting picked on. So, and this goes all the way back to kindergarten is when I got the name. And it just kind of stuck. Not so much in my later years, but, in my childhood for certain, Bam Bam was my nickname. And childhood in school was great. Up through middle school, high school, I played a lot of sports, a lot of hockey. I still play hockey with some of the people that I grew up playing hockey with on Tuesdays. So it's a great time. Obviously, it's like a little reunion every time we get together, but school was great, man. I got no complaints. Anything that you say about my childhood, man, I was certainly blessed. That's a fact.
It sounds like it. I got to ask though, are there still people out there that will call you Bam Bam and people are like, what the hell are they talking about?
No, my mom every once in a while will throw out the name Bam Bam. And I think it's just to get some looks, or bring back some old memories. She's really good about that. But yeah, Bam Bam. That's funny.
So you make it through school and, you graduate. What happens after graduation?
So I did what everyone else was doing and, went to college. I went to community college at Washtenaw and didn't go anywhere with it. I had the same mentality that I did in high school, which was pretty much just chasing girls and hanging out. I partied way more in high school than I did in my 20s. But I had a great relationship with my parents. It was, I'm here and it was built on trust. Right. Yeah. And so if I was ever in trouble, I knew that I could just make a simple phone call. They'd be there in a moment. But after high school, I went to community college and I had fun in the interpersonal communication classes. But I most certainly still wasn't trying to absorb the mathematics and English
right.
and all of the things.
Right. There's a question I wanted to ask, and I should have asked it a little bit earlier, but so where'd you fall in the pecking order of kids?
I'm the oldest.
Okay.
Yep. So my half brother is technically the oldest. I didn't meet him until I was 16. And we're not in we don't keep in contact too much. He's actually in the Army right now doing great. But yeah, I'm the oldest of our family and just, didn't matter what we were doing. If we were playing Ninja Turtles, I was Leonardo. If we were playing Three Ninjas, then I was Rocky.
Okay.
Yeah, I was always the leader, and totally cool with that.
Which Power Ranger were you?
I was the Red Power Ranger.
Oh, okay.
Yep, I was still the leader of the Power Rangers. That's a fact.
This wasn't lost on me. So my son's about your age, and we used to watch Power Rangers every morning.
Oh yeah.
I want to know why the stupid Green Ranger had his own song. You know what I mean? Like the Power Rangers had their song, but when the Green Ranger showed up, there was a different song for the Green Ranger. We used to make fun of it.
Yeah, I don't have the answer to that. The Green Ranger was also the White Ranger. He was my favorite, by the way, but I was the Red Ranger for about 6 years for Halloween.
Okay.
Yeah, I wore it religiously. My mom still talks about that. That was Power Rangers, though. The live action one that they came out with later in life was great. Did you know, and I just learned this out, or just recently, but that entire show was actually filmed in Japan for a different plot. And then they took all the video and just dubbed over it with their context and added a few clips here and there to give it some background context. It was crazy. Yeah, I know. It'll blow your mind. I'll have to send it to you later on. Yeah.
You've ruined my life.
Listen, that whole thing was a lie.
Wow. I know. I'm glad that wasn't my childhood.
Mind blown. Mind blown. No, it's kind of crazy how they did it, but it's cool.
Yeah. Well, but I digress. So you're in college, and really it's more like just a little bit more of high school for you, so a bit of a higher level. Mm-hmm. Did you get your degree?
No, actually, I realized quickly that after a year of paying for community college and getting, the same subpar grades, I wasn't a bad student by any means, but I wasn't the one that was like in the books because I had to get, the 4.0. It just wasn't me.
Wasn't your thing.
No, and that's fine. So after high school, did the college thing for 1 year, and a buddy of mine was joining the Michigan Army National Guard, and he's like, let's do it together. He signed up to go infantry, and I didn't know what I was, destined for. So I took the ASVAB, and military police came up. Mm-hmm. I was like, that sounds kind of cool. I'll, drive around a cop car and pull people over and do the whole police thing. And so we joined, right? Hands down, probably the best decision or thing that I ever did for myself was to choose to serve. There's a lot that I can say about my life, whereas if I didn't enlist at the time that I did, I have no idea where I'd be at today. So I owe a lot of who I am and where I'm at to my military service, hands down. There's no denying that. But even when I made that decision, it wasn't an easy decision. My dad was certainly for it. Not necessarily because I needed it, but because he knew what it did for him. And so that was encouraging to have that kind of support. My mom obviously was kind of a mess about it, joining during a time of war, knowing that it would be likely that I'd have to go serve. But it didn't change her support or love for me. Mm-hmm. If anything, it just kind of deepened it and made it another trial that we were going to make through together. So her perspective on things, again, is huge in many different aspects of my life and the way that it shapes how I am, how I think. She's incredible, and I could honestly just sit here and talk to you about how awesome or how lucky I am to have her as my mom.
We could probably do a whole separate interview about your mom.
We could, and I'm willing.
So here's something that. And laugh if you want to. Until recently, probably in the last couple of years, I didn't realize that you could just join the National Guard. Like, I thought the National Guard was for people who had been on active duty and just wanted to finish out their time. I kid you not. So, I actually it was after I retired and I started really talking to people. I realized, there's probably more people that joined the Guard like out of high school or out of college than there are that joined like I did after serving, in the Navy for me. So yeah, that was kind of a surprise to me to find out that you could do that. So, how did you, so I know that your friend kind of turned you on to the National Guard. But did you think about like the reserves or other components, or are you just like, hey, I'm going to join the National Guard? Well,
the National Guard to me was the reserves. It was just a component of the reserves. So you basically had two choices, Michigan National Guard or Army Reserves. But everyone kept telling me to consider the Michigan Army National Guard over the reserves simply because there was an additional source of funding. Mm-hmm. So more opportunities, more promotion opportunities, schooling, you name it. So that was my decision or my logic of choosing the Michigan Army National Guard. Plus, it was kind of thrown at my lap. Like, hey, here's a great opportunity. And I had no interest in going active. I've mentioned it several times, and I'm sure I'll say it a ton more, that I had a great family life. Mm-hmm. There was no need for me to run from anything or try to get out of town. There wasn't a whole lot going on in our town. But I certainly wasn't looking to leave the people that I loved.
Right.
So that was a great choice for me. We call them, weekend warriors. We prefer the term hometown heroes.
I like that. I think we should
adopt
start
it.
An advertising campaign for that. Absolutely. And anyone who's been in knows that the whole weekend warrior thing is out the window. At least my experience was not, 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks in the summer.
Yeah.
And we'll get into that a little bit. When did you head off to boot camp?
So I enlisted in April of 2005. I actually shipped to basic training at the end of September, and I started basic training on October 1st. I was the very first class of the new fiscal year, and the only reason that that's relevant is because we were the very last class to receive the BDU uniforms, right? The battle dress uniform. So the green army fatigues, and then everyone after us was wearing the tan boots with, the ACU colors.
Right.
So we were the last ones to have to, shine the boots and go through the, I don't know what you would want to call it, the old school mentality of training back before they had a lot of these new policies. So I'm thankful in that aspect that I had a harder training session, and for us, for MPs, it was a total of 6 months. There was 11 months 9 weeks of basic training and then 11 weeks of your advanced individual training to become a military police officer. And it was at Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. And the cool thing about there is it's kind of a lot of like Michigan, where you had all 4 seasons.
Sometimes in one day.
And that was where I was going with it next. It's fine. It's, when we were doing our field training exercises or even just waking up, for normal routine on base, it'd be snowing in the morning and then you'd be, sweating profusely by lunch. So yeah, but I just remember, the training exercises out in the middle of the fields, doing those simulated patrols at night, and it's just like the crisp, wilderness sky, because you're in the middle of nowhere. It's just nothing but stars. There's no lights anywhere. Just so peaceful, and it's like that smell of like the crisp air. Like I still reminisce about it today. Like I'll be walking down, just I don't know. You just, those scents will kind of capture you and take you back to specific moments in time. Some good and some bad. These good ones, though, it's funny because I can still remember, doing my patrols, looking up at the sky and recalling that exact moment of, what it smelled like, what it felt like, how cold it was. It was just, I don't know, it's one of those kind of cool history or memories.
Yeah. Well, not to put too fine a point on it for people, but this is how it is at Fort Leonard Wood. I remember going to OBC there and doing a field of training exercise where it was like, it had to be 90 degrees and we were all just drenched in sweat. We're working all day long. We get back to camp and we had set up these GP medium tents with these wood stoves in them to heat them up because it got cold as hell at night. Yep. Well, we all just hit our cots and everyone fell asleep and no one put wood in the stove, right?
Yep.
Woke up the next morning frozen to my cot. Like my whole uniform crackled because it was soaked in sweat and then it froze. That's my memory of Fort. I loved it there, but that's my memory of Fort Leonard Wood.
Yep.
So what was it like stepping off the bus the first day of basic training? I'm sure your dad filled you in on kind of what to expect, but did anything surprise you when you got there?
No, not too much. And it's honestly because I have this mentality of it is what it is, right? I've kind of always had that mentality. So, this is before I learned the term embrace the suck,
We'll get into that one.
Yep. So no, I mean, it's one of those things like anything in life. A, I knew I wasn't alone, right? And B, it's to better myself. So like, they're not going to kill me, and whatever they put me through, I will survive. And so with that mentality, I just embraced it. I had a lot of motivation, and I was the loudest, I was the proudest, I was, the hardest working, in my opinion, just because that was my goal. And yeah, so there was no surprises. I mean, it was intimidating, obviously. But I wouldn't say that I was scared of them. I was more or less excited about the opportunity because it was something new. And at that time, I had never been in an airplane. I had taken like one big family vacation at the time, and it was when I was 16. So just a couple of years prior, we took our first like big road trip across the country. But this is the first time that I've ever been away from my mom, my dad, my brothers and sister, my friends, for a extended period of time. So that was 6 months. yeah, so it was a bit of a culture shock, right? Being with a ton of random strangers and then just having to learn to make it and survive and, coexist. But yeah, definitely a cool experience.
Anything stick out in your mind from basic training that hey, I remember this?
More or less along the lines of the camaraderie. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm sure we're going to talk about camaraderie in any relationship, but the military specifically, being around a ton of random, men and women, because we're MPs, right? Females both serve. But being in the barracks, it was one of those things where you learn to get along, right? You quickly learn who's willing to make friends and who's not trying to make friends, and you find your place and your little squad, and you drive on and do you. So
yeah, because you're not the only guy that was the oldest in the family, and this guy's not the only guy that was a middle kid. I mean, it's a bigger pond with a lot more fish in it.
Yeah, and the funny thing about it too is like everyone's got stories. So you go to a place like basic training, everyone's the biggest, the baddest. I was the hometown hero, I was the quarterback for my high school football team, you name it. And thankfully, I had a little bit more humility where it was like, I'm just going to stay quiet and I'm going to do me. And I'm going to let these guys talk, and then we'll see what happens when the rubber hits the pavement. So yeah, it's.
Yeah, for every person there's a story.
There
for
is.
Sure.
That is a fact.
So you get through basic training. Ever since I've known you, you've been in great shape. So I'm assuming like you're right out of high school or you're right out of college, you're in good shape. So that's not an issue. You graduate and you go to AIT, which is right there at Leonardwood, right?
Yeah, it was the same spot.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I joined when I was 19. And I played hockey, my entire life. I was always in decent shape. But I was never what I am now. I was about a $155 soaking wet.
Oh, so you're a little guy.
I was a little guy. Yeah. So I had a lot to prove because I wasn't, I walk around at 210 now, just consistent.
Right.
And I fluctuated weight. I used to be a bodybuilder, so I was up to 245 at my heaviest, lean. And that's just way too big. I can't move. I couldn't clap my hands barely. But no, $155 when I went in there, so I could run like the wind. And I was strong-ish, but yeah, at $155, you're not doing a whole lot. No. So, I think a lot of people too think that like once you get out of basic training, you go to AIT. That's a whole different world. But really, AIT is kind of an extension of basic training to a certain extent, right? It was absolutely an extension of basic training. We had the same drill sergeants. There was no like congratulations, you graduated. Heck no. As soon as we graduated, because they have different phases, right? In basic, you have red, white, and blue, mm-hmm. and then in AIT, you have I think it's black and gold. And during the black phase, AIT was 11 weeks, mind you. And so like a couple weeks into our black phase, they did a platoon shakedown and found like a bunch of chewing tobacco and magazines and contraband that we weren't allowed to have. Obviously, it's not the end of the world, but in basic training, someone's going to eat it.
It feels like the end of the world.
It feels like that. They make you feel like it's the end of the world. And so everyone paid. Everyone got, we went back to red phase, which is the very first phase as far as the way they treated us.
Right.
And so, yeah, here we are like 13, 14 weeks into training, going back to 3 hours of sleep, 4 hours of sleep, having to do fire watch where half the bay had to be up cleaning in full battle gear. And mind you, again, we're talking black polished boots on we were in one of the newest facilities. So it was brand new white tile floor. So in cleaning, you were also marking up the floors. It was extremely counterproductive, and their psychological games worked.
Yeah, by design.
By design, yeah, because you had to it was 1 hour on, 1 hour off.
Uh-huh.
So you had to be up for an hour, get dressed. You had to be up early, right? Because your shift started at, on the hour. So 10 minutes early, get up, get dressed, make your bed, get all of your gear on, including your IBA, your Kevlar helmet. Your gun had to be with you, and you're on your knees scrubbing the floor at all hours of the night while everyone else is trying to sleep. And yeah, it's just it was insane.
Making a bigger mess than you're cleaning up.
Yeah, but right. they proved their point. They proved their point. No more chewing tobacco and magazines in the barracks.
So did you learn in AIT that military police wasn't just driving on a cop car? I mean, I know they do garrison work, but really that's My experience was I think I did that once.
Yeah.
The
So
whole time in.
garrison work, was about 2 weeks of the entire 6 months training operation. And I actually did do some garrison work when we were at Camp Grayling for one of our 2-week exercises. I think it was supposed to be 2 weeks and it ended up being 3 weeks. But yeah, I worked for the provost marshal's office and I got to drive around in the cop car and do all the fun stop checkpoints and blah, 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 blah. But no, I had no idea that we were primarily a combat function. And not that it would have changed anything. I mean, my experience in the military is defined by my combat experience for sure. So certainly wouldn't change anything. But did I know at the time? I certainly did not.
I think the military is really good at having these great names for these jobs. And then you get to the job and you're like, well, wait a minute.
Yeah. It was like, congratulations, I got sold on this one. No wonder. Right. It's like, oh, is that why they gave me the signing bonus? Okay.
Yeah. Anytime someone's willing to give you a ton of money to sign up, that might be a clue that something's not going to be so cool.
I got a good story about, getting you to sign up for hockey in a tournament that we were, I don't know if I'm allowed to stray, but
absolutely stray away
the tangent. So like I play a lot of hockey to this day. I still play 5 to 6 days a week. I'm incredibly blessed. My wife is a superhero, right? She is
because
incredible.
she puts up with you. Let's just be honest.
She encourages it.
Wow.
You know what? I mean, if there's one thing to be said, it is if there's any piece of advice, and I'm sure we're going to get on the advice section, but it would be to find yourself someone that you can spend the rest of your life with that makes you a better person, that makes you want to dive in on all levels. My wife is incredible in so many different ways. She's my best friend. She's the hardest worker I know. She's an incredible mother. And she's very supportive, and in dealing with injuries from combat, she has been my saving grace on many different levels. So she knows that hockey is extremely therapeutic. It's a way for me to exert energy and get frustration out, kind of get my mind off of things. And so she's always been very supportive of it. But in my Thursday league in Novi, we ended up winning the league, and then we got invited to play in the state championship. Or the Michigan State playoffs, I'm sorry. And so that was this huge tournament, a lot of semi-pro guys, a lot of college players. We're just a beer league team, right? We're an A-league beer league team. We're a good team.
Right.
So we get invited to this tournament, and we show up, and they're like, all right, here's your locker room, here's your game schedule, here's your beer tickets. Because it was at Fraser Arena where the Motor City Rockers play. So a big turnout. And so we're going into the first game. We just got absolutely obliterated, like mercy 9-0. And the game was over by 3 minutes into the third period.
Did you use up those beer tickets pretty quick after that?
Well, we realized why we got them. We were the patsies. They needed a team. I'm like, and at the end I ran into some guys that I played with and, getting beers. Like, how'd you guys do? I was like, man, we just got murdered. Like, it's not even close. And they're like, I was like, all right, did you get your drink? He's like, no, I'm going to go buy some in a minute. I was like, well, did you get your beer tickets? He's like, what beer tickets? I was like, your beer tickets. He's like, we didn't get no beer tickets. It's like, what do you mean you didn't get no beer tickets? He's like, I'm saving all the money I can after what it cost to get in this tournament. I was like, you guys paid to play in this tournament? And he's like, what, you didn't? I said, no. He's like, you guys got a free ride and beer tickets? I said, you know what? I should have asked more questions when we were invited. But every game was like that. I think it was like a 7-2 loss and an 8-3. And then it was vicious. We had no business, but it was a lot of fun. And that was another embrace the suck moment, but it was funny. It was like asking questions like, why did we get these beer tickets and how come it didn't cost us anything to come play?
Yeah, I'd scratch my head a little bit.
Yeah, it was funny though. Sorry to stray on that one, but
not at all. And I don't want to lose this moment either. When you talk about your wife, I remember there's a guy, G. Gordon Liddy, who's this really tough guy. I mean, he's CIA special ops, this really tough guy, but he said the importance of finding someone is not finding someone that you can live with, but finding someone that you cannot live without. And there's a big difference in that.
That's a fact.
It's a difference between playing to win and playing not to lose.
Yep.
Right. So let's go back. Sure. Let's go back. So you get done with basic, you get done with AIT, you come home.
Yep. So
what was that like?
Well, really not too crazy because I wasn't home for that long prior to deploying. So I graduated March of 2006 and came back, and we got orders in June. So it was really quick to get the news and then kind of set up all of the arrangements. And I wasn't married at the time. I was dating a girl that I'd been seeing for years, and yeah, so we got the orders, and all the friends were, oh no, that's crazy, and I'm like, all right, well, this is my job. This is what I signed up for. I guess here we go. It just happened a lot faster than what I had anticipated.
Right.
And so in June we get the call, and we started getting everything ready. And then it was July. We went to Grayling for a couple weeks. And then after Grayling, we went to Fort Dix. And after Fort Dix, we went to Kuwait. And then from Kuwait, we went into Mosul, Iraq. And that whole pre-mob, I want to say, was roughly 3 months.
Yeah, 90 days.
90 days.
90 days from the time we left in July to the time we jumped in October.
Yeah. So and it was fast, right? So, and the funny thing about my pre-mob is, the 2nd Platoon's mission at the time was detainee operations. So the entire time that we're going, right, the rest of our company is all slotted to be, combat arms and route patrol and training the Iraqi police and all the badass stuff. And, we're fighting to be cage kickers.
Right.
There was a lot of animosity in my platoon simply because there's a lot of correctional workers already in my platoon that were like, man, I didn't want to do this. I already do this for work, blah, 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 blah. So that was the deal. So I was slotted to do detainee ops. We did all of that training. And then towards the end, we all had to be certified in either a driver or a gunner and what have you. So my platoon leader, Lieutenant Moon, awesome man. I was his driver. Right. So wherever he had to go, I kind of had because I was the lieutenant's driver, I kind of had I don't know what you want to call it, privileges, right? Where I was like,
you got to do things other people didn't get to do.
Yeah.
Let's just be honest.
Yeah. That's a fact, right? Yeah. I got to go here. All right. Well, I'm jumping in the truck and I'm taking it. Not everyone just had a truck they could take, so to speak.
Right.
No, but that was great. But it was towards the end. Where nothing sat right. I didn't feel like I was supposed to be a driver. None of it felt comfortable, especially when we're doing the operations where we're driving in, we got to go respond or whatever the mission is. Right. Nothing felt right. And so it was like 2 weeks or a week before we were supposed to leave where I pulled him aside and I was like, you mind if I speak freely? He's like, what's up? I'm like, I'm not supposed to be a gunner. He's like, I don't know what you mean. I was like, I'm not supposed to be behind the wheel. I'm supposed to be in a gun. He's like, we're a week out before we deploy, and you're just now telling me that you don't want to drive. I was like, I'm telling you that I shouldn't be driving. I need to be in the gun. He's like, okay, then I guess, you can try and test out. He's like, you think you can do it? I was like, I have no doubt that I can do it. So he's like, all right, well, he's like, I'll get you signed up and you'll test out on every single weapon system tomorrow. I'm like, you got it. So I went back and, talked to Gary, my best friend, just so everyone knows, Gary Lee Queen was the first person that I met at Fort Dix, standing in formation with the rest of the company that, a bunch of people that I did not know.
Yeah.
Nervous, obviously, new situation. And he is standing directly to my right, and all of a sudden I feel water on my boot. I don't know this dude.
Right.
I don't know this dude.
Right.
He's squirting water from his Camelback onto my boot. And I'm like, dude, knock it off, right? And he's like, all right, yeah, gotcha. All of a sudden, the water starts again. And I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, hi, I'm Gary. I'm like, oh, man. I was like, what's up? And he's like, hi. And I mean, that was the start of our friendship. To this day, one of my best friends.
He had a special attitude. There was just, I don't know.
That dude is a gift.
I don't even know how to describe it, but he just made you feel
welcome.
Yeah. Like everything was going to be okay.
That is a fact.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I remember him really well.
Yep. And I'm fortunate that, he was the one to my right that day.
Yeah.
Squirting water on my boot. And,
you think there's coincidences?
No, not at all. I think it's God's plan.
Yeah.
And I'll get more into that in detail. No, God has worked so much in my life with the people that he's put in my way, to help lift me up in times where, that I was down. I mean, Gary, I've lost a lot of friends to suicide, and Gary knew that I wasn't all right, on the last one. And he drove 5 hours from Kentucky. No ask, no nothing. He knew, and he just showed up at my doorstep. I'm getting teary-eyed right now just talking about it.
That's fine.
But that's the truth. Everybody, my hope and my wish is that everybody has a friend like Gary in their life. Mm-hmm. I have another friend, Troy Licata, that's, on that exact same kind of level, showing up, always there. We converse every single day via Snapchat. And it's funny because he lives 40 minutes away, and we rarely ever see each other. I mean, it'll go years before we'll see each other in person, and we're just down the street, right? But we keep in contact. There's nothing that he doesn't know about me, and vice versa, because we have that man in the mirror relationship. And it's just pretty awesome. Sorry, I lost track.
No worries. So Gary's dumping water on your feet.
Yeah,
we're at Fort Dix, a place that lives up to its name.
And yeah, I know. Tell me about it. But literally from that moment, I mean, we were joined at the hip and we were paired up. I mean, we were bunk mates in Leonard Wood. We were roommates in Iraq. We were the 2 lead gunners in our squad. We were the platoon sergeant, platoon leader, and squad leaders, right-hand men, constantly had, other objectives and orders, trying to fulfill that kind of role. And I mean, it was a blessing. It was a privilege. I had met so many incredible people, especially, Jeff Jennings, who's an incredible mentor to me to this day, still one of my best friends. I mean, I could talk about that man for hours, and the way that he's impacted my life for the better. And, yeah, it's funny because now that we're going over this, I mean, I took notes prior to this, but it's like you start reliving the memories, and like I could sit here and just ramble on about the different stories about during that time frame that we're speaking of.
Yeah.
No, but Gary, absolutely is a gift. He's incredible. His family's awesome. And like I said, we're still best friends to this day. So that's how that was the first person I met at Fort Dix, and we became roomies, and we lived together after the Army, and started families together and worked at the prison together. And he's doing incredible right now, so I'm really happy for him.
Well, that's good. That's good to hear. I mean, I haven't talked to a lot of guys in a while.
Yeah,
there's a handful that I still keep in contact with, but no. And I think you make those kind of friends when you're in the military, right?
Yeah,
especially the things that you go through when you're doing that. So, everyone survived Fort Dix. We get on the plane. You head over to Kuwait. Talk to me about what that was like.
Kuwait was, if you're talking about the 5 senses, Kuwait was just hot. It was a hairdryer blowing in your face the second that you got off the airplane.
With your head in an oven.
With your head in an oven. Yeah, that's a great way to describe it. And windy, and the sandstorms. I had never seen a sandstorm, obviously. And I just remember being at Arif John, and I forget where we were going from. We had it was probably one of those the language classes, right? Just going from class to class, and we were walking out, heading from one spot to the other, and then you had all of our water just sitting there baking in the sun in the plastic bottles that tasted like plastic. And I remember looking behind me, and it was just like hazy. I'm like, what is that? Everyone's like, what the hell is that? None of us had seen it before.
Right.
And then all of a sudden you saw people running. We're like, well, what are we running from? And they're pointing to the haze. I'm like, well, what is it? They're like, sandstorm. I'm like, okay. So we all just started running, and I found a porta potty, and I shoved myself in the porta potty. And all of a sudden it was like a sandblaster hitting the side of the porta potty. I forget how many people we shoved into that thing just to stay out of it and get it out of our hair. But yeah, it was wild. It was literally a wall of sand that was coming for us. I mean, we have tornadoes and hurricanes in the States and this and that, but we don't have sandstorms like that, at least not that I'm familiar with. Not from Michigan.
No, maybe down in Arizona, someplace like that, but certainly not in Michigan.
No. And so yeah, those were some crazy experiences. But yeah, I just remember it being hot. That's, the biggest thing from Kuwait. There was no real threat in Kuwait, but it was just damn hot. Right.
It was all about getting acclimated to that heat. So how long were you in Kuwait?
2 weeks, I believe it was. It wasn't that long, 2 to 3 weeks.
Right. And then from there, you climb on what, a C-130?
C-130, and we just start taking off to Mosul. They strap us in, and that's kind of when you get the real feel like we're heading in. I mean, you're in your full combat gear with your rifle between your legs. And you're strapped in. Everybody's left to right. People are taking pictures, talking, this and that. And we take off, and the flight wasn't that long from what I remember. But what I do remember is that downward spiral that they gave us.
The combat landing.
Yeah, the combat landing. I'm talking everybody and their mother was like, what in the hell is going on, right? And then it's like a straight nosedive and then just a veer off into a landing. So that was absolutely memorable. But stepping off the plane, you'll never forget the smell of Iraq. It smelled like burning trash. And the worst part is that you get used to it. You know, I mean, that's the honest truth. I mean, it's hot. It's again, another hair dryer in the face kind of deal with your head in the oven, but now you've got the sinuses just a burning. And everyone's thinking it, but no one's saying anything about it because it's not going to make anything better.
Yeah, you're there.
You're there.
There's not much you can
Congratulations. Welcome to Iraq.
Right. In fact, isn't there a sign at Mosul airport that says welcome to Mosul or something as you're getting off the plane?
Yeah. Thanks. I feel greeted.
Right. So we got there, and did you get your sleeping assignments right away? I mean, how'd everything work when you got there?
I'm pretty sure we got our sleeping assignments pretty quickly. You know, just like anything else, when you've got that large number of people gathering in a specific area for a specific thing, all getting specific assignments. I mean, there's obviously a time frame that it takes to get done, but I mean, our coordinated efforts between leadership and you know, the base, I thought was pretty dang smooth, to be honest with you. I don't remember any issues. It was just, you got to go here now. And you're like, okay, like, all right, I got to go here now. Okay. And you did what you're told, and everyone did their part. And before we knew it, we all had we stayed in shoes, right? Is that what they're called?
Yeah.
They're shoulder housing units.
Yeah, containerized housing units.
Yep. It was a glorified Connex box with an AC unit and a window.
And a door.
And a door. But I'll tell you what, I'm thankful for that AC unit, because there's a couple times that it went out, you know. Made you very thankful for having it.
Yep. And one of the things that people might not know too is if you've never experienced this before, at least the way it worked there was that there's a unit that you're relieving. And so there's a period of time where you have two complete military police companies or whatever in occupying the same area when you're doing your left seat, right seat in handoff. And so once you got there, you got your stuff moved in, left seat, right seat started up pretty quick, didn't it?
Yeah, I want to say it was within days. You know, and at first it was just the line leaders, and I don't know what we had going on while they were out there doing their thing. Probably basic, you know, maintenance, finding our vehicles. Now, mind you, we didn't even discuss the fact that when we got there, like, my mission, according to my upline, was that we're still detaining operations, right? So 2nd Platoon got all the busted vehicles. We got an ASV that didn't have an engine in it. We were supposed to be on base and not leaving base, and that was not the case when we got there. We were given different assignments. That we are, in fact, you know, one of the four platoons that were controlling sector and training the Iraqi police, and you know, that's our mission. And so obviously we're all super excited about it, but we had not trained for that the entire time. I mean, we did, but not to the same extent. I mean, we had detaining operations in addition to. So
right,
I guess go us. We got more schooling, but we learned on the fly very quickly. And if there's one thing that I can say about the military force is that we're resilient, and you know, we all became mechanics very quickly. We all made friends with, you know, the motor pool staff very quickly. You know, aside from getting the vehicles up and online so that we could actually perform our mission, I mean, like, we didn't have up armor on everything yet. I mean, my turret was just a spin along turret with a shield in front, and that was it. There were no sides. So again, like I said, I mean, I went half the deployment like that. Thankfully, I got my glass because I took a round to it not too long after getting it. It was
again, another coincidence, right?
Listen, man, I'm telling you, God is good, man. And you will hear that, you know, from me so many times. And before I keep going, I have to mention my Uncle Dean. You know, we talked about the incredible people in our lives. My Uncle Dean is the one that led me to Christ back in high school. He actually opened up a youth ministry called Raw Ministries. And that was the first time that I'd ever experienced the Lord's presence. And he had prayed for me. And I was a kid, and everyone
pray for me.
Everyone can use some guidance and some prayers. Right. And I panicked, man. I didn't know what the heck was going on. I was shaking and I was crying, and I ran out, and you know, I was like, let him go. And I battled with it. I didn't know what the heck was going on. I went out and bought a Bible, and I'm not the greatest Christian. I can attest to that. But man, I love Christ. I know where I come from, and I know what to expect when I'm gone. So it's passing on that love and just living a life of gratitude, faith, hope, and love. Really, really says a lot about who I am, in my opinion, and I have my Uncle Dean to thank for that. So before we go, I just had to mention that.
No, and I think that given the experiences over there, that was probably a pretty important part of your life.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, we keep talking about the the coincidences that are not coincidences. Right. I mean, there's so many reasons and situations on our deployment that I should not be alive today. And so when I say that it's easy for me to live a life of gratitude, it's because like there's a lot of reasons why I shouldn't be here today. I've got a beautiful wife. I've got 2 amazing kids. The best occupation that I've ever held, or best title, has been dad. Yeah. To hear my kids, hey, daddy, daddy, daddy. And don't get me wrong, like being a parent can be a lot sometimes. But if there's one thing that I've learned, the Army will teach you a lot. The military in general will teach you a lot. But there's also a lot of things I had to unlearn in order to maintain healthy relationships, especially with my wife, being a good partner. Everything can't be dressed 24/7 with roles, responsibilities, obligations. And if you mess up, like there is grace, right? So it's one of those things. She's incredible. Again, I could just go back, her patience and putting up with me, and the things we've accomplished together is, again, something that I would hope for everyone else to be able to experience. Yeah. So, but no, the military life, as soon as we got on there, the left seat, right seat, I remember, well, first off, let me paint the picture. There was 2 bases, right? In Mosul. You had Diamondback and Fob Merez. And so we were fortunate enough to be on Merez, which were all new, Connex buildings, blah, blah, blah. Diamondback had the airfield and the better chow hall, so to speak, according to the people that lived there or were there already. I think it was self-proclaimed. I never hated our chow hall. I liked it personally.
Neither did I. A little history on our chow hall, though, is the Christmas before we got there, someone had come in there with a suicide vest and blown that chow hall up. Yeah. So it was brand new, and security was really tight there. But no, it was good food. And when I hear people talk about some of their experiences of it, I feel a little guilty. I know about how we were. But anyway, I don't want to.
No, you're fine. Well, to that point, right? So Diamondback was kind of like the makeshift base at the time. It was the first one established, and so like that was just a lot of old buildings that they had turned into barracks. They had the PX and commissary, so like they had that going for them. But our base was new. So everything like made sense in its layout, and we had an MWR, and you remember that we were playing guitar and a lot of great experiences. But yeah, so the layout of the base was whatever. We were actually pretty close to the chow hall too, so that worked out well. For those that don't know, your bathrooms obviously are not in your room, right? So yeah, it's I don't know. There was a lot about the lifestyle on deployment that I'm grateful for. We had, in my opinion, a lot of amenities. So we were blessed in that aspect.
I do want to ask you this question though. So, our bathrooms were not co-located with our chews. So, I don't know if you ever did this, but like in the middle of the night, you have this battle with yourself. Like you've been drinking water all day long. Oh, yeah. You really got to take a leak. Oh, yeah. But you're like laying there going, I don't want to get up and put all this stuff on to go take a leak. So
how many bottles of water did you save? How many empty bottles did you save?
Oh, a lot. Because I got tired of having that argument with myself for 2 hours where I could have been sleeping. So filled up a lot of Gatorade bottles.
A lot of Gatorade bottles. Yep. And then in the morning you just had to go and empty those things out.
There was no maid service there.
No, that's a fact.
Okay. I'm not the only one.
No, that was absolutely a thing.
Yeah. Yeah. So, we were blessed to be where we were at. I don't know if you know this. Originally, we were supposed to be in Restamaya, which is where the 46th was.
Oh, really?
Yes.
I was not familiar with that.
They changed our mission, which is one of the reasons why your mission had changed was because we had changed missions from Restamaya to Fob Merez. And so that changed the whole dynamic of what we were doing. And then as we were landing in Kuwait, things were changing the whole time. And so it was very frustrating. Sure. From every level. And I know extremely frustrating for the people on the ground thinking, hey, here's what we're going to do. And it all changes. Anyway, we get there. We're blessed to be in this place. And like you said, it has all the amenities that you can want. So you start your left seat, right seat. What happens?
So my first experience with the left seat, right seat, I was sitting behind the driver. We were going out into town, and I don't know if we had a specific objective rather than just go out and look at IP stations and kind of familiarize ourselves with it.
Right.
But in the middle of it, there was a fight that had gone on, and just a lot of smoke. There was a big bomb that went off. It was probably a V-bit. I'm not sure the details at this moment. But anyways, we all diverted, right? So we're looking out, and we got Kiowas up in the air, and they're circling around the area. So like that's where we're going. And I can just remember the sound of the Humvees, revving the engines and switching gears and merging through lanes of traffic. And you just kind of own the road when you're there. Like, it's wild how you just take it over and, okay, this is what we do. Now, mind you, the landowners at the time were a striker unit. Okay. So, and they were from Hawaii, Alaska. I think they're from Alaska.
Yeah, I think they were.
Yep. And so I'm sitting behind the driver's seat. The gunner's out there. He's spinning around. He's doing his thing, and we're hopping curbs, and we're going here, we're going there. I look out the window, and there's this Kiowa that's just circling around. Now we're close, right? And he comes up, and I can feel the wind from the propellers coming through the turret, hitting me inside the truck. And as I'm looking out there, he goes up. He flips on his side. And he's completely perpendicular with the ground now. And he drops a smoke bomb to mark the location of where we got to go. And I'm like, that's kind of cool, right? Purple smoke starts coming up. Well, all of a sudden, the striker unit comes through, ripping ass, stops right in front of us. The back hatch comes down, and about 11 badasses just get out and start running, just running into this building. And I'm like, what in the heck is going on, right? And I'm talking, when I say like intense, they were intense, like to the definition. But that's how we learned to fight. And in a lot of ways, that probably saved our lives, because the way we handled situations wasn't you rolled through, bombs to get a safe perimeter and this and that. But when we took fire, we stopped and we fought. And I don't think that they were expecting that, because, our platoon specifically had a lot of small arms fire and action. I don't know. We were absolutely a force to be reckoned with out there, but I think it was because of that intensity that's just how we handled ourselves. And, it definitely paid off and saved lives. That's for sure.
Yeah. Well, and for all the comforts that you had on the fob, it was outside the wire, was not a friendly place to be. And
no.
This was during the surge too, which successfully pushed a whole lot of enemy up into our neck of the woods, which intensified the work that we were doing.
Yeah, when we sat down with the people that we were taking over for, and you go through like this whole routine, right? Everyone that's there is like leaving, so they're trying to pawn off all of their belongings on you. Like, I got this TV and I got a PlayStation and whatever. But you sit down and you start having some heart to hearts with people, and it gets real. They lost friends, and they're giving you life advice while still smoking and joking, trying to make you laugh, because like the place you're at sucks,
Right.
And, but they're excited to go home. And not everyone was so fortunate. I remember there was a guy that passed. He was shot the day before he was supposed to go home. In fact, I don't think that he was supposed to roll out that day. Something happened where they needed him. And, but that's the nature of the beast, especially when you're, in that kind of situation. When you're called, you're called.
And the 549th had a hard time. That's the unit that we relieved, because they lost a platoon leader. Yeah. They lost quite a few folks during that deployment.
Yep. Yeah. And obviously, I don't want to dwell on it too much, but we learned a lot from them. And when first Cav took over, it was a completely different situation and scenario. I didn't feel like we had nearly the support that we did with, was it the 89th? I don't remember what the unit was.
So the 89th was the brigade, the
overall brigade for MPs.
Yeah.
But I don't remember the striker units.
Yeah, because they were kind of in and out of there.
Tropical Lightning, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was actually.
Was that first ID? I don't remember what it is off the top of my head. I know we get to wear their patch, but anyways, long story short, I held a couple different titles or positions when we were, when we established and we had control of our Iraqi police stations. In our general mission, I was a gunner. I was the platoon leader's personal security detail. I was also the fourth man in the stack for breaching, so I carried a shotgun in addition to my M4 and my M9, my handgun. And then I also had the 50 cal on the gun on the truck. So I had a lot of different responsibilities. I felt I was very well-rounded, and I was thankful for it too, because I didn't have to do the same thing, over and over and over. It kept it interesting. But as I had mentioned before, being the platoon leader's detail and being, Sergeant Jennings' go-to guy, me and Gary, I had a lot of other responsibilities in addition to just being a Joe. So while most PFCs were out there, doing their bare minimum or not bare minimum, but you know what I mean, though. Doing what's expected. Absolutely. And then going back, we always had something else that we had to work on, following to help push them forward. And I mean, in my opinion, our jobs were easy because it was more or less just paperwork or running errands. Whereas, Moreau and Anderson and Jennings and Yo, all of them, like, they still had to be up and they were planning for the next day. I mean, I remember, I can't even tell you how many times, like, it'd be like 3 a.m. and I'd have to go to the bathroom and Moreau is just out there because she couldn't sleep, right. And she's planning for the next day or whatever the case may be. I know a lot of badasses. And I'm thankful for them and their leadership and the way that they handled themselves and conducted themselves, because there's a lot that went on that we were completely unaware of.
Right.
And just like a parental figure, they kind of shielded us from what we didn't need to know, kept us in the loop of what we did need to know, and conducted themselves in such a professional manner that we were never the wiser.
Right.
So,
right. Which I think the key to good leadership is that the people that you're working with don't know all the stuff that they don't know.
That's
right.
Fact. Yeah.
And it can be frustrating too, because sometimes people don't understand, why am I doing this?
Right.
But there's a whole reason behind a lot of that stuff. So you get the left seat, right seat done, the 549th pulls out, they go home. Give us a kind of a day in the life. Now, no 2 days were ever the same. Let's just be honest. But kind of what was your routine, if we can use that word?
So typically it was, I think you were supposed to get like 6 days of missions, and then 1 day of QRF, quick response force, and that was usually your motor pool day.
Yeah,
right?
Your recovery day.
Recovery day. You do your maintenance on your vehicles. It kind of ended up to be like a half day's worth of work, right? Mm-hmm. And at the end, you'd get to go to the gym or go for a run or go to the MWR, like we were talking about, where they have games and stuff set up. Just kind of decompress. But a typical day, depending on what time the mission was and what the mission was, you'd wake up, you'd go to breakfast, if you're fortunate enough to get a late start, right? And then you'd do your pre-maintenance checks on your vehicle, make sure you've got all your equipment tagged and ready to go. So for me, it would be like my night vision, 3 weapon systems, 4 weapon systems. Just having everything accountable, being ready, right? Getting in contact with your team, making sure that your team leader has what they need, and then obviously us, Jennings, and the platoon leader, and then you go down to ops, and you get your mission brief, right? Do your safety checks again, and I mean, us, I don't know about everyone else, we said a prayer before we rolled out every single time.
Yeah.
Every single time we'd gather up in a circle, and someone would take the opportunity to pray for everybody and, ask for a safe mission. And then we'd roll out. We'd do our what do you want to call it? Just we need the barrel or whatever, the berm, couple rounds, make sure your weapon system's firing, and then you just go out and do your deal. I mean, a lot of times it was just going to Iraqi police stations and, them doing their checks. And again, being the lieutenant's security detail, I was always, dismounted. My team leader would go up in the gun, take my spot, and I'd go in there and listen to, the gibberish of what they were doing, just maintaining the door, looking at alleyways and, points of entry, just trying to keep an eye on things, keeping it tight. But there was a lot of times we were diverted for whatever reason. Either a VBID would go off, or another squad needed help or assistance, or an IED was going off, or they found one and they had to cordon on the area, so we were support. You name it. I mean, every day was a little different for whatever reason. And so it was nice that we could be so agile to be on our toes. And as long as I had enough beef jerky and chewing tobacco, man, I was good forever. Like,
I'll do whatever you want me to do.
Let's
Just
go.
Give me those two things.
That's right. Yep.
Yeah. Well, in also, IEDs, VBIDs, small arms fire, that was a daily occurrence. These weren't exceptions. Like, oh, we went 7 days and nothing happened. It was every day.
It was every day. And one thing that kept us on our toes is the EFPs were coming up from Baghdad, right? So I don't remember what the name EFP stands for, the acronym, but basically it was an explosive device with a copper plate at the front of it. So as the IED went off, the copper melted and created this, molten lava projectile that would literally just go right through your vehicle and subsequently whoever was in the way. And so we had just heard horror stories of that coming up and, taking a lot of lives from Baghdad on its way, moving north towards us. And so that definitely kept us on our toes. And we had a few of those. Some of them, destroyed the trucks. But yeah, there was always some kind of new threat, whether it was a route that was black at the time or, just, I don't know. There was even a time where we had bounties on our heads because we took down the commander of the IP station or the district or whatever you want to call it.
Right.
Yeah, just a lot of.
Let's take a quick break.
Veterans Archives is a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and we rely on donations from our listeners. If you are enjoying these stories and would like to support our continued efforts, please go to www.veteransarchives.org and select the donate button. Thank you. Because you were out there training the Iraqi police force, but there were many times where these guys they're not your friends.
No.
And sometimes they look surprised like when you showed up.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that there's one thing you could say about our company, is we followed through, so we said, we're going to do something, we're going to do it. And you had our trust until you didn't. And so, when we realized that there was ammunition being stolen from the police stations, and all of a sudden there's just this, barrage of small arms fire that we're getting, hit with. Like, the coincidences, connecting the dots really wasn't that difficult.
No.
But when we arrested that guy, all hell broke loose. And they were coming for us hard. They actually put us on a no-roll status. I think It was like 3 days. It wasn't anything crazy. But yeah, we had to remove all of the markings on our vehicles so that everyone was in unison. Whereas before you'd have like the platoon number with a dash and then your squad number, right? So that everyone could identify whose truck was who from the air.
Right.
And so yeah, we had to remove all of that kind of stuff. It was wild. It was like wild, wild west.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny.
No, that's the truth. And so if I'm not mistaken, didn't second platoon, you guys got one of your squads got ambushed at a police station? Yeah, we got, so there was a couple different ambushes, but the one that stuck out the most in my head was we were actually QRF. Mm-hmm. Okay, so it was our down day. We were doing maintenance in the motor pool. I was at the gym. I lived my life in the gym. That was my way of decompressing and de-stressing. Everyone needs to have their way of de-stressing. I don't care if it's reading, if it's, exercise, you got to find your thing. Right.
And so exercise was it for me. I would exercise twice a day, most days, to the point where it was probably super counterproductive for actual fitness, but it was great for my mental health. But no, I was at the gym. I remember this. I was actually working out with one of the special forces guys. His name was Sonic, and they always had the coolest names. They got to wear beards and all the good stuff. We did a lot of missions with special forces. We had a couple with Delta, primarily because we had females attached to us, and so anytime that they needed to, do a search and seizure or a raid, someone had to be there to, pat down and search all the females. So we would typically get tasked out, and most times they would just take the females and then we would be in the trucks, providing some kind of route security. But there was a couple times where we got to be dismounted with those guys, and, we're all at the low ready, and, we're going in and we're sweet and stealth and this and that. And they're just, man, their guns at their side, and their helmets are cocked back, and there's not a care in the world. A couple gunshots go off and they're just, their head casually turns to see which direction it came from. So it's like you can really tell the difference between who's acclimated and, who's been there less than a year.
Right, right. And not, you were that guy at one point.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You were the guy that ducked at one point, but not anymore.
No, not anymore. You got desensitized to that pretty quickly. Like I said, that whole it is what it is mentality really kind of shows its face pretty quickly when you come, close to death a couple times. Yeah. But the whole small arms fire, IEDs, like all of that became just commonplace for the most part. But I don't remember where we're at in regards to.
You're at the gym working out. You're on QRF.
There we go. Here I am.
I'm here to help
there
you.
I was.
All great stories.
That's right. There I was working out in the gym. But yeah, the loudspeaker, the siren went off and it said Black Hat 2-1, Black Hat 2-2. I don't know what the terminology they used was, QRF activated, blah, 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 blah. Before I even knew it, my team had showed up at the gym with our truck and picked me up. I'm in my PT uniform, obviously. And that's how I rolled. I had my PT top on and people needed help and we had to get the hell out of there as soon as we could. So they had my gun ready to go. I just checked headspace and timing, racked some rounds and off we went. But on our way there, we certainly got ambushed. There was an IED that went off and then all of a sudden, I'm sorry, let me take back. So we had rolled through this, I don't want to call them housing units, but it was basically, we were pinched from both sides where there was high-rise buildings on both sides. So they waited until we had passed through so that they were shooting at us from behind. I was the lead truck. And I'm not proud of this, but I actually didn't have my night vision that day. The team didn't grab it, and I forgot to look for it as we were going to roll out. I almost omitted that whole information because it haunts me to this day that I didn't have it. Yeah. But the reality of the situation is we were looking for muzzle flash. And I don't know if I'm allowed to say how many we, exterminated that day, but there was a lot of them. Yeah. And when we got the casualty report afterwards, I was the very lead truck. And so, it wasn't dark. I could still see, obviously. But I never fired around on that day. And I actually got a shell casing award for being one with the most composure, because when there's a firefight going on behind you, like the first thing you want to do is turn around and start shooting. Right. And I didn't. I kept it facing forward and I was ready for whatever was coming, and thankfully it didn't. But yeah, that was absolutely a memorable day, to say the least, because that's just how it started with the ambush. I mean, the amount of IEDs going off and small arms fire ricocheting off vehicles, and even an RPG came and skipped off the top of our ASV. And we've got video of it all. I mean, so like if there's one thing I can say that's kind of cool about my time in service is that it was during a time of technology where we were actually able to record videos and take pictures and all of those kinds of things. We came out unscathed, thankfully. But yeah, the pucker factor is real. You're running out of ammo and, you're changing over, belts on your 50, and you got people yelling over here, over there, and direction and distance. And, but there's one thing that kind of came through in that moment is that we're all professionals. And that at the end of it, it's just a series of, checking boxes. Is everyone okay? Is your weapon system online? Right? What do we need? Who needs what?
All your sensitive items. All
sensitive
those
items. Do we need to pass around? Who needs ammo so we can, make sure everyone's got what they need before we, continue on. Right. But that ambush came prior to, that ambush came as we were responding to a prison outbreak. Right. And so when we got to the prison, there was only a single round that was actually fired. It was an inside job after looking at it, like hands down. There was a single round that was shell casing laying outside the prison's front entrance. Their entire armory was ransacked with all the weapons and ammo. All of their high value targets were released. There was zero fight that had in order to break people out of that prison.
Right.
But it turns out that a lot of people that were broken free from that prison were the same ones involved in our ambush.
Right.
So
this was the Badoosh prison uprising, right?
Yeah. So and which is wild because we were the QRF. So we weren't the ones that were supposed to be in sector that day. And we actually beat the people that were at the COB, the combat outpost, closer to that situation, that station, by a long time. So, and we got in a firefight on the way in there. So it is what it is. They probably knew better because the second that we took over, that became our responsibility.
Yeah. Actually, yes, it did. We ended up moving squad at a time.
Yep. So, it was 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off, or I think maybe it was a week on, week off. But we still had to maintain our initial mission, and training the Iraqi police and, combat patrols, you name it. We just lived there now. At least at the time, it was 1 week, one off, because we lived out of our trucks. We didn't have tents or Connex boxes. So, the stories of having to dig holes and burn your own crap and, make makeshift bathrooms and you're eating MREs that was the real deal for us for a while. And then they brought out, the Connexes for us to live in. We're like, oh, thanks, man.
Yeah.
So that was not ideal, to say the least, but it was what it was. And
we were glad to let that mission go.
That is a fact. As soon as we could pass that off, that was great. One cool thing that happened while we were there, though, is they had a Bowflex machine. So I still got to work out in, right? I mean, it's the little things. You got
your priorities.
Listen,
Brandon.
there isn't something, not every day is great, but there's something great about every day or every situation. And I found my something great in that Bowflex at that time. Another cool thing is, being in Iraq or the desert, you have some different wildlife, right? So camel spiders and scorpions. I remember grabbing the cables on the Bowflex and I'm doing crunches. And as I'm on the downward, I look down and between my feet, I just see this haze. I'm like, what the heck is that? So I just start getting closer and closer and closer. And it turns out it was a scorpion, right? And the clearer they are, the more poisonous they are, right? Didn't know that. Caught it though. I found it got a Gatorade bottle. I was like, sweet. Take it back. It's like, oh, check out what I got. They're like, oh, we just found this camel spider. So naturally we did what any, civilized military unit would do. And we put them in a ring and saw what happened. And surprisingly enough, the camel spider won, but it obviously got stung too many times and died. So that was our entertainment. That was the highlight.
Cage match where no one came out.
That is a fact. Yeah. No.
Yeah.
But yeah, camel spider was huge. They're the size of a softball. And the scorpion, it really wasn't that big. I mean, probably 4 inches long. I guess it's a decent size.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm not a scorpion expert over here. It's my first ever catching a scorpion.
No one wants to be the scorpion expert. That's for sure. That's for sure. So this is kind of how the whole thing goes. I know because I was there. Everybody came home.
Yeah,
everybody came home, but not everybody came home in one piece, and that was kind of the hard part of that.
Yeah,
that deployment.
The unit that was attached to us from Florida, they lost a guy, and I remember I wasn't on the detail, but our other squad was, where they had to go out and pick up the bodies and the pieces, and I know that really messed them up. And we were so fortunate to come back in one piece. I mean, we had people that lost limbs from IEDs and gun. It was what it was. It's part of the deal. But again, in that moment, I remember we got ambushed when we were at an Iraqi police station, and an RPG came through the alley and hit two of our people, Mikulka and Marvin.
Yeah.
And I was inside with the lieutenant at the time. And so we run out, we see what happened, bodies are laying on the ground. And I was just going to run right to him. And he yelled at me, get in the truck. So we drove around and provided cover in that way. I remember Yo laying down suppressive fire and me running over and just looking at Marvin leaning up against the wall. Mikulka was laying on the ground. And, it was just, all right, get him in the ASV. You had Norman in there with the IV bags already ready to go. Norman was the guy that, he had binders full of certificates.
Right.
It was just
every school
he could possibly go to, and the paperwork to say that he did it.
He's a firefighter now, right?
He's a firefighter. Yeah. He's a cop. He's an EMS tech. He's, you name it. The guy's got the credentials.
He's got another binder.
He does. He's got another binder for it. Awesome guy. So, I pick Marvin up, put him in the truck, and they're getting the IV bag going. And as I go to grab, lift McCulka up, she's a badass. She's a bigger girl. She's probably 200 something with the body gear on.
Yeah.
I mean, that armor was heavy as shit as it was.
She's a literal farm girl.
Yeah. Legit. Strong. Awesome.
From Ovid or that area. But
yeah.
Yep.
And so, I grab her by the IBA, the vest, and I look down to grab her leg, and her leg is literally just hanging on by her ACL. I can see the tendon, and that's all that it was just a boot with a string attached to a limb. And I just kind of stood there and looked at it for a second, and she's like, Mickus. I looked at her, and she's like, grab my foot, put it on my chest, get me in the truck. And that was it. You got it. Just bam, bam, pick her up, put her in the truck, and grab the gun, lay down suppressive fire, and get the hell out of there. Take them back to the cache so that they can get bandaged up and shipped out. Yeah, I mean that was a hard day. That was one of the more bloodier, more personal, more real situations. I mean, the amount of firefights that we've been in and come out, on top, they're a dime a dozen. But when someone gets hit, it becomes way more personal, way more real. A lot of feelings kind of get opened up, and but again, thankfully, we were that close where, the feelings were good because it made you realize you're human. But it sucks seeing someone that you love get hurt, because you really do become family over there. I mean, you're relying on each other day in, day out, in good times and bad times. You celebrate with people in the good times, and you're there for them in the bad times. And it's, when you're on a deployment like that, your bad times aren't necessarily something that happened during work hours, right? Something bad could go on at home. Yeah. And, and people are worrying about you back there. And, I think a memorable or something that's worth mentioning is that, I've come from a great family, and one thing that's certain is that my mom didn't sign up, I signed up. Right. And she served with me in that aspect where she didn't have that choice, but her support was unwavering, and all of them, my dad is included, but yeah, I mean, she's just, I've said it before, she's incredible. She's my biggest cheerleader. Yeah. She's always, I've always had the support and the love and that backing. So yeah, especially in those moments, it means a lot knowing that you've got the support back home for you to do what you got to do there. And wasn't easy on everyone, but we got through it. Yeah,
absolutely. I have to ask a question. So you were there when they put Marvin, because we were in the city, you couldn't do a medevac. They couldn't bring in a helicopter, so we did Casevac. Yep. I heard that when they put him in the back, he looked up at Norman and said something about of all the people,
it's you. Something
Did he
along
really
those.
say that?
I have no doubt in my mind that is how it went down. But honestly, the funny thing about it is that looking back, you couldn't have asked for a better person to be in that truck at that time. It's just like, of course it's you. So
that sounds like Marvin. Yeah, that does sound like him. The other thing too is that when they got, not to put too fine a point on what a badass McCulka was. They got her back to the cache, and I remember we were pulling her out of the Humvee, and she was pissed. But she wasn't pissed because of everything that had happened. She was pissed because she had just gotten a tattoo.
Oh, I don't doubt it. It ruined it.
And it ruined her fucking tattoo.
Yeah.
And she was like, do you know how painful that tattoo was? Her leg is hanging off her.
Yeah.
And she's complaining that she's going to have to get another tattoo. That was her thing. The other thing was that she had her iPod with her. And that took a shrapnel.
Oh, did it?
And it still worked.
Oh, nice. Yeah, a little keepsake.
So, a little keepsake for her. But I remember those two stories. And I know I didn't personally witness Marvin say that, but I've heard that a hundred times.
Nope, I was there.
But McCulloch and I were talking as they're getting her out, and she was pissed because she was going to have to go get another tattoo. I'm like, you can't ask for better than that, and now we have to ship them off.
Yeah, yeah. Again, thankfully they're okay, but the fact that they had to go home. That's two family members that are no longer, at your six, ready at a moment's notice, having your back. And that's, and that's something. So
yeah. What was the rest of the deployment like for you after that?
The rest of the deployment, I mean, we found something good in all of the times, whether they were good or bad.
Right.
I can say that for certain. I mean, you're fully aware of the guitar playing and singing with Jennings and I. I mean, you're the one that advocated for me for a free guitar from Martin Guitars crying out loud.
I can neither confirm nor deny that I talked to Martin Guitars on your behalf.
I'm trying to tell you, man, that was one of the greatest moments. To be completely honest with you, because, it did kind of suck being deployed and all the things.
When you had that shitty Iraqi guitar,
I was still thankful.
You played the heck out of it.
Well, and the thing about it is that was at the MWR. So it's not like that was like in my possession.
Right.
Like we'd have to go, I don't know, probably half a mile or something. I don't remember how long the walk was. But yeah, I would spend as much time as I could at the MWR playing guitar and writing music and just kind of escaping. And then all of a sudden, this brand new mini Martin beautiful acoustic guitar shows up at my door, and I'm like, "What the heck is this?" And there was no to, there was no from. It was just a guitar with my name on it, and the grapevine got word that maybe the commander had something to do with that. And, at the time, neither confirming or denying. But I most certainly is grateful for whoever that was.
Yeah.
And it made such an impact in a positive way for me and the rest of the troops. It wasn't just me. I'm just the man behind the guitar, singing with my buddy. But the amount of peace and joy that came to the rest of the squad and the platoon, and even people from other platoons that would hear us play would come and gather around. And, it's at the end of the day, I mean, it's like you'd see in the war movies. We're sitting around, either it's a little fire, it's a table playing cards, smoking and joking. You got, the dude off in the shadows playing guitar with a couple of people surrounded by him, singing some songs. And, if you were a stranger walking by, most of you wouldn't know what songs they were, but they were Jennings and my songs. Like Jennings would do a lot of the writing, and we put lyrics or music to it, and then we cut an entire album. While we were there, and
I still have it.
Do you? I
do.
Yep.
I still have that album.
Yep. And so everyone, the black sheep.
Yeah.
That's a fact. Yep. And so everyone in our platoon or company, or platoon specifically, knew the songs, and so they'd sing along and all the good stuff. I still have that guitar. It hangs up in my office as a daily reminder of, the good times.
Yeah. Well, music is very therapeutic, I think, for people.
Absolutely.
Especially when they have a passion for it like you and Jennings had.
Yeah, I think it's nice because it's something that anyone can relate to. You don't have to be the writer. You don't have to be the one playing the guitar, but you can still feel the emotion in the lyrics, especially when someone like Jennings writes them. Right. He's incredible for so many different reasons, but his talent of writing is definitely something that sets him apart. The rest of the deployment, it was, like I said, a lot of small arms fire, a lot of IEDs. And as you're aware, you could only be hit 3 times with a I don't know if confirmed is the appropriate word, or recorded. We'll say recorded blast. And after that, you get taken out of the gun. And so it was just commonplace where if you got hit with an IED and no one got hurt and there's no visible marks in the vehicle, like there's no harm, no foul. The reality of it is that there's still, concussive waves that are running through everyone's bodies, and damage is being caused. However, on the outside, there's no harm, no foul, and you're not about to step out of that gun and leave your team behind.
Right.
Well, like we talked about earlier, halfway through the deployment, I had got my up armor on my vehicle, and thank God, because during that time, I want to say it was like June or July, and we had left that following November. So I went majority of the time without the up armor. But man, it's just seemed like they kept coming and coming and coming. I remember I totaled a vehicle earlier in the deployment, and then about halfway or so after I got back from my leave, which the leave going home after being there for so long, I mean, you don't just go home back to normal, man. I'm telling you, when my parents picked me up, they were so excited to see me, and I was excited too. I'm in uniform, and everyone's going crazy when you're at the airport, and the support and the love and the cheering and the clapping, and it's emotional. I can still see the tears in my mom's eyes. But on the drive home, my was a gunner. All I did was look at overpasses and trash on the side of the road and for strange people on top of buildings or you name it. So like I was so overstimulated on the way home that I passed out. My mom was so kind. She's like, oh, you could take the front seat, sit up there with your dad. And so I did. And
big mistake.
I spent the entire drive home with that seat reclined all the way back and my eyes closed because I just couldn't do it. I almost grabbed the wheel and pulled us off there. I was like, what are you doing? He's like, I'm fucking driving over here. It's like, you can't go under that bridge. He's like, how are we supposed to do it, Brandon? I was like, there's a trash bag right there. He's like, yeah, it's trash. It's like the things you have to separate yourself from combat and war to peacetime.
Right.
That trash bag is most certainly probably just trash. But again, great family. I spent some time up north when I was back. Obviously got to see my friends, my girlfriend at the time, but that 2 weeks went so fast. And then I was right back over there, probably more anxious to get back than anything because I knew that I was leaving my other family, to fend for themselves. And it's not that they're not capable. It's just that that's my job. My job is to protect that truck and the rest of my squad.
Right.
So when I got back, there was a new influx or a new wave, a lot more IEDs going off. And I got hit again sometime in July, shortly after, which totaled that truck. And I was probably at like 8 or 9 IED explosions at the time I was exposed to. And then the following month in August, my truck was down because it had gotten hit. So I took Marvin's truck. They were down for a maintenance day or something. And took his truck out and we got hit again. And it was at that one that I was removed from the gun because you can't hide, 3 blown up trucks,
right,
and not be recorded.
Not for very long.
Right. And I didn't even know how serious it was to, get removed from the truck. But it came down like, hey, you got to go report. And, they sat me down. They're like, all right, you've been hit with too many IDs. You can't be a gunner anymore. You have to stay on the base and you got to work a gate. And it's not the combat function that I'm used to. So I went from going 100 mile an hour to checking ID cards. And that was a huge ego kick. And not that there's anything wrong with checking ID cards. I think that if there's anything you could say about the military is that at the end of the day, everyone has to perform a role and you're part of a cohesive unit to get a job done. Right. And so it wasn't a knock against checking IDs. It was just that I'm used to kicking indoors. I'm used to taking people down. I'm used to, being in firefights and, bombs going off. And now I'm just waking up every day to, sit at a gate until it's time to go home, at the end of deployment. And thankfully it wasn't that long. It was only a couple months until we actually were on our way out. But, but yeah, that from those injuries or from those explosions, I have a traumatic brain injury, that has lingered what's the word I want to look for? Not undocumented, but undiagnosed, I should say, because the VA had misdiagnosed me. And that went on for 10 years. 10 years where they said, basically, I am just consumed with PTSD and it's responsible for all the symptoms that coincidentally are directly in line with the traumatic brain injury.
Right, right. So
the VA actually diagnosed me with my traumatic brain injury, but when it came time for disability, they refused to acknowledge their own documentation. And it was tough because I was having a lot of highs and lows. I was suicidal at times. And I keep telling you, I come from an amazing family. I had all of the support. You could say I was fed with a silver spoon. I never went without. I never had to worry about anything. I never went without love, support, shelter, all of the things. So to have those kinds of thoughts of hopelessness was just insane because
if that can happen to you, that can happen to anyone.
That is a fact, and trauma is trauma. It doesn't have to be, a wartime kind of relationship. Trauma is trauma and everyone's experiences are different and they're all valid. Right. Yeah. And I'm going to touch on that more, because suicide prevention is at the heart of my advocacy now as I continue to serve after the military. I'm with an amazing organization called Veterans Connected, and we'll get into that. But the suicidal thoughts and the miscommunication at the VA really kind of set the tone for a lot of struggles and a lot of highs and lows and not sure what the hell was going on. It was a lot of confusion. But it's all part of who I am today, basically. And I don't know how far I want to jump ahead, but basically, if it wasn't for my military experience, I wouldn't have gotten a job with the Department of Justice, like right out of it. So going back to it, I'm removed from the gun. We basically demob. We get back to Fort Dix. We're there for about a month, which was insane that we had to be there for an entire month. I'm sure you had to deal with.
It was a long time.
A lot more than, yeah. Just, I remember families calling Congress and just get them home and just,
right.
Oh my goodness.
Right.
Yeah. So apparently while we were deployed, Jennings, Anderson, Yosepaitis, they all worked at the prison.
Yeah.
Right. And they're like, this is what you're going to do. You're going to apply for this job. I was like, well, I don't want to be a correctional officer. He's like, I don't care if you don't want to be a correctional officer. He's like, it's a great job and you're not going home with nothing to do. I'm like, okay. So I applied for the job, right? Completely forgot about it, mind you. Like me, Gary, a couple other people applied for the job. So I get back, I'm high-fiving all my friends. I actually went back to school, right? And I got straight A's for an entire year. I was on the dean's list. I excelled, again, I know I keep going back and forth and jumping, but it's worth mentioning. The military gave me such a foundation for structure that I found my own type of work ethic and held myself accountable. So, I excelled in basic training. I'd get like the perfect, PT score. I was supposed to get promoted in basic training and I failed map reading. I failed map reading because I threw my back out and I had to go to sick call. So I missed that day of class. And then came back and they're like, you have to take the test. And if you don't and you fail, then, you get held over. I'm like, all right, well, I don't want that. So I guess I'll take the test. And I failed it. I didn't know what the hell I was doing. Right. So I retook it and passed it after studying, right? Like I should have. I didn't have time in the beginning, but it's whatever. So anyways, they go, my upline was like, you're getting promoted. And they come back like, what the hell? You failed map reading? Of all things, you failed map reading? I was like, I wasn't here for it. I was like, I'm sorry. He's like, oh man, that's crazy. So it was what it was. But again, like the whole accountability thing, going back to school, getting straight A's, I enjoyed work, right? In my family, if you were able, you worked. It just was what it was. I've had a job since I was 12, right? And that job didn't have to be anything crazy, but it had to be something to hold you accountable. So at 12 years old, I was refereeing hockey.
So you're back at school and you're a straight A student now.
Straight A student for the first time in my entire life. Like I said, the military gave me a new aspect and lease on life when it came to personal accountability. But also after the deployment, like everything else just kind of got easier, if that makes sense, right? Life wasn't so much like, oh, I got to get out of bed at 8:00 so I can be to work at 9. Like, no, I've been used to getting up at 4:00 in the morning, right? To go get ready for the day. And, it's
now
funny.
You're sleeping in, right?
Right. In the military, at 19 years old, you can be responsible for millions of dollars in pieces of equipment, right? And then come back to civilian life and you can't get a $5,000 loan, to buy a vehicle to get to work. No, but it's, and at the time, this was 2007, 2008. So right at the midst of the crash, right?
Right.
So we got home. I went back to school. I was collecting unemployment because we were allowed to.
Yep.
And I went to school, collected that check, and it was like halfway through the winter semester that I don't know what came over me other than like I felt the need to work. So I started looking for work, and I found it in a packaging plant in Brighton, and I gave up a guaranteed paycheck of 40 hours to make $10 less working 40 hours a week. Not a good trade-off, but I felt the pride, I guess.
Well, and there's a part of you that has to do something, right?
Well,
you
for
can't
sure.
Just like sit.
No. And honestly, like I partied more in high school than I did in my 20s. Now that I was in college, it was, I don't know. It was schooling, right? I didn't like schooling. I was doing it because I was told that it was what I was supposed to do.
Right.
So anyways, I get the job, and I'm laid off 2 weeks later, right? And I'm like, crap. All right. Well, now I like, do I file for unemployment again, or do I just go look for more work since the filing process is ridiculous? I ended up just looking for work. I ended up getting picked up right away. The place was like, your work ethic is incredible. You get a lot done here. You're just the lowest in seniority, and we don't have a choice but to can you. Right. All right. So I go out, I get a new job. I start like just a couple days later, right? Same kind of factory or same kind of plant, packaging plant. No big deal. I work there. I'm kicking ass. Another 2 weeks goes by. I'm laid off again. And I get the same story. You're the hardest worker. We'd love to keep you. I've already put in words. I've got so-and-so out there looking for work for you because, we know that you're the go-to guy. I'm like, all right. But at this point, I'm just defeated, right? I'm working 40 hours to make less money than I was just collecting a paycheck for free.
2 up, 2 down, right?
Yeah. And so I found myself in the bar. I went to the VFW. It was like, we got laid off at like noon. And I was like, fuck this, man. I was like, I'm so done. Yeah. So I show up and I go to the bar and I order a beer, and I must have just had this pissed off look on my face because this, Native American dude to my left looked at me like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Right. And he's, older. And I'm like, I just kind of looked at him like, and I shake my head. I'm like, man, I am doing everything that I thought I was supposed to be doing. I'm trying to work, even making less money than I would have if I would have just stayed on unemployment and not done anything. I was like, I'm actually giving a shit and trying. And I was like, and it's just not panning out. And he's like, well, can you pass a piss test? I said, yeah, I can pass a piss test. He's like, all right. And he's like, show up here. He's like, drop a sample and show up for work on Monday. And it was a brick making factory, Unilock. Mm-hmm. The guy was an old Korean War vet, a real badass, completely soft spoken. And you would have never known it unless you knew his history. So yeah, I showed up on Monday and I worked my fingers to the bone, 12 hours a day, 10 hours on Saturdays, 8 hours on Sundays for $11.25 an hour, smashing my fingers, miserable. My hands hurt so bad every morning when I would wake up that I would literally have to unfold my hands just because they were so clenched from grabbing brick all day long and stacking them and sorting them and throwing them on a conveyor belt. And you're working with other people. So as you're throwing them, you're smashing other people's fingers too. And it's just the nature of the beast. It was a terrible job. Terrible job. Made me want to go back to school. I ended up quitting 3 months later. I gave it 3 months. I gave it the good old try.
Oh, yeah.
I was like, I'm going back to school. I was like, this is why people go to school.
I think God was trying to tell you something.
I caught wind of it. I listened very clearly, and I was just like, yep, you're right. This isn't for me. I got a job at O'Reilly, or actually it was Murray Auto Parts. And I was just, a store associate, this and that, but I took pride in my work. Right. And it was fun. I enjoyed it. I actually enjoyed that job. Well, then I got a phone call from a random woman asking, hey, this is Patty Lilly from FCI Milan. Just curious if you're still interested in an interview. I'm like, who is this? She's like, Patty Lilly. I'm like, from where? She goes, FCI Milan. I'm like, what's FCI Milan? She's like, it's a federal prison. I said, I applied at a federal prison. She's like, listen, do you want this interview or not? And I was like, yeah. I was like, I just don't remember applying for it. She's like, all right, well, you have an interview on this date. All right. So I called Jennings, right? Obviously he's the one that I still don't recall ever applying, but I remember, him saying, you're going to do this. And so this is what it was for apparently. But I was a shoo-in, I had a bunch of buddies that already worked at the prison. So it was kind of set up for me from the very beginning. And this is another one of those, if I hadn't joined the military, I wouldn't have gotten this job or this opportunity. Right. So, I go to the interview and I'm in a rush. I forget my wallet at home. I got no driver's license to check in. And like, it's a prison. You have security. They're checking ID cards and verifying who you are, and you're getting searched and you're going through metal detectors and yada, yada, yada. Well, I didn't have my driver's license. And so they made this huge deal about it. Captain Tony came through. I was like, well, we're going to have to call the police because you're driving without a license. And that's not a good look when you're trying to apply for a law enforcement position and blah, 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 blah. Just give me the riot, right? And then all of a sudden, like the entire room busts out laughing because it's me with 7 other people sitting on a board interviewing me. And so they had a lot of fun with it. And literally at the end, they're like, we're just fucking with you. And I'm sweating over here.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Yeah. Cause it's like, this is a big deal. Like this is an opportunity to work for the Department of Justice at the Federal Bureau of Prisons and one of the greatest, facilities, in the country. just based on location, right? I mean, it was just down the street, it was 35 minutes from my house. I didn't even know it existed, to be completely honest with you. But now you can't help but notice it every time you drive down 23 South on the way to Ohio. So I ended up getting a job with the Department of Justice in 2009. It was June. Sorry, it was June 9th, 2009. It's weird how I can remember specific dates for shit that doesn't matter anymore. But yet I can't remember, the important stuff. But anyways, so I had taken the knowledge and skill sets from the military and transferred over into the federal prison system with me, and just again put my nose down and I excelled. They said you can dress in this polo t-shirt and these pants, or you can wear the dress uniform with the collared shirt and the tie and the nice jacket and your hair done and this and that. And so, I was like, okay. And then Jennings looks at me. He goes, "You will wear the button-up shirt with the tie, with your hair done, and the polished boots." And I said, "Yes, sir." So that was my mentality, and that's just how I rolled. So because I was their go-to guy almost immediately, I fast-tracked. I was given the shit assignments because they knew I'd do it.
Right.
But because of that, I promoted, and I had a resume that I had built because of it. But shortly after joining, you still had to go to training, right? Mm-hmm. So I went to training at, I should back this up. Before I had gone to my training at FLETC, Federal Law Enforcement Training Center in Savannah, Georgia, I was actually slotted to go to WLC, Warrior Leadership Course at Fort McCoy, Wisconsin, for the Army, because we're guards. So I'm still working both jobs, right? Guard. Right. So for 3 weeks, I had to go to Fort McCoy, Wisconsin, and then I would come home for 1 week and then go down to Savannah, Georgia for another 3 weeks. Mm-hmm. And so when I was at Fort McCoy, Warrior Leadership Course is the course that you go to in order to be eligible for your sergeant stripes. And just coming off a fresh deployment, like, I didn't care. I was getting out, right?
I'm done.
My 6 years was enough for me. And mind you, majority of the time that I was in, it felt like it was majority of it was active, right? I mean, between the basic and was it 15 to 18 months of training and being on deployment, and then when we came home, it seemed like there was no 2 weeks anymore. It was 3 weeks when you were in Grayling, and then there's humanitarian missions and whatever. So yeah, but I went there and immediately was designated the class leader, right? So, and that was, I don't even know how that all came about. Like, it was just like, all right, who's going to be the class? And everyone pointed at me. I was like, and I haven't talked to any of you guys. Like, what is this? But again, a blessing, a calling, whatever you want to call it. And during that time, you're going through your schoolwork, and you're doing field training exercises, just being tested on leadership abilities, how you're going to conduct yourself, making sure that you're checking all the boxes. You're following instructions, but actually listening to the instructions, because there's a lot of trick scenarios where you're going into a safe village where you have a lot of friendlies, right? And almost every single unit that would have to advance on that area was coming into low ready, and we're making our way, being stealthy and bounding Overwatch. We're knocking on doors, and then the guy comes out hollering and screaming, and then the group leader, the instructor, was like, "We told you this was a friendly village, and you've got everyone pissed off because you came in all hot." Right. Like, there's a attention to detail scenario. But during the entire thing, I kind of had this false motivation going on where it's like, I didn't want to be here, but I knew I had to be here, so I need to make the best of it. Right. And so yeah, I was loud, I was excited, we had fun. The field training exercise, I just remember being on base, or, in our shoe area. And I told my buddy, I was like, I have to go take a piss. And I was like, watch my gun, right? It's pretty common and standard. If you're on base and you're deployed, not a big deal. Watch my gun. I'm going to go pee. And when I come back, I'll grab my rifle. Mm-hmm. Well, when I came back, my rifle was gone. And I asked the guy, I was like, where'd it go? He's like, the instructor took it. I'm like, for what? He's like, he said that you laid your rifle just laying around. I was like, no, I gave it to you. He's like, I know, dude. He's like, I'm sorry, I don't know what to tell you. I'm like, all right. So I find him and he is just chewing my ass. You can't just leave an unattended rifle laying around. He's like, I was an insurgent and I came through and I just took your rifle. And he's like, how could you even possibly think about that? I was like, you're telling me that you're on a secure installation. You walked into my barracks where I sleep as an insurgent, took my rifle and just decided to walk about with it. I was like, that doesn't sound like a very viable scenario. I was just like, this is a safe zone. And so I did what anyone does in these actual situations and passed off my rifle. I took a piss. I came back, it is what it is. I said, the scenario you're presenting isn't a real thing. I said, not at least in my experience. I said, I'm not here to argue with you. I was like, but it doesn't, these don't, 2 and 2 isn't adding up to make 4 here.
Right.
And he wasn't trying to hear it. So I had to stand outside for about 4 hours with my rifle over my head saying that I left my rifle unattended. And it was what it was. And I was the loudest about it, and everyone knew that, I'm not the guy, that's, the careless type.
Right.
But whatever, I played their game and it was what it was. And we went out and we did the field training exercises and we led in teams and this and that. And, during the whole time, there was people being quizzed on all of the information that we were being taught. And, but no one in our squad was getting, the Q&As like that from their leadership. And so when we got back from our field training exercise, we're all sweaty, nasty. We've been in the field for whatever. And, they're like, hey, Mickus, you need to go up and test out. I'm like, what does that even mean? I was like, well, you got to go. You're representing our platoon as, the honor graduate. I'm like, is that why all these guys are getting tested and questioned and, by their leadership, recite this. What's the answer to this? Blah, 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 blah. He goes, yeah. I was like, you never thought once to make me throw me some questions if you were going to have me do this? He's like,
help me out with this. And
during the entire time, like, this is the same guy that made me hold my rifle over my head for 4 hours.
Right.
And he's like, no. He's like, you may not like me. He's like, but I do have integrity. He's like, and they're all cheating. He's like, you're not supposed to be quizzed. You're not supposed to be any of these things. He's like, if we're going to do it, we're going to do it the right way. He's like, if you're going to win, he's like, you're going to do it the right way. So in my mind, I'm like, whatever, dude. I was like, yes, Sergeant. and went about there and I'm all nasty and I'm not happy. I'm not happy at this moment. And I walk in there and you've got the commandant, you've got the first sergeant, you got the sergeant major. And they're all sitting down, and I look like a bag of ass. I am dirty. I am sweaty. I am disgusting. And I didn't have all the answers. I didn't. To be honest with you, I didn't much care. Right. I wasn't trying to impress anybody. I was just trying to survive and get everyone else, through the gauntlet, unscathed. And I gave it, the best that I could. And the answers that I didn't know, I was like, sir, sergeant, I don't have that information for you. I said, but I will find out and I will, get back to you. And it felt like that was my answer for a lot of things. But apparently I hit it out of the park because at the end, I actually took the top award. Out of 150 students, I graduated first in my class and received all 3 distinguished awards, the Distinguished Honor Graduate, Commandant's Award, First Sergeant's Award, and I think there's one more. Sergeant Major's Award? I don't know. There was 3. But I was completely taken back. I never once expected that I had the highest score in the entire company. Especially when my mindset was like, forget this. But apparently it was one of those things where, whether or not I cared, I really did give a shit because it wasn't about me. It was about everyone else that I was leading. Mm-hmm. Right. So the false motivation, I guess, must have paid off. It got me just enough attention to write the I don't know what you want to say. It was an incredible moment to be recognized like that. But like I said, I then went home for a week and then had to go right back to to FLETC in Georgia. And same thing. It was another 3 weeks of me not wanting to be there, but I needed to be. And so we sit down in class, who's going to be leadership? Same exact, everybody points to me. You had a red team and a blue team, and I was the leader of the blue team. Same kind of deal. It took first in class and I get like the top shot or something like that. Me and my buddy we tied for the highest marksmanship. Mm-hmm. That was another, that was a gravy walk. I mean, because you only had to work till 5. And so like at this point, now it's a vacation, I got the evenings to myself. We had a great dining facility. But yeah, the whole thing about that was just that my mentality, if I would have been sent to those courses as a 19-year-old prior to joining the military, there's no way that I would have scored the way that I did or had the attitude that I did or excelled in the way that I did. But the military set me up for some personal accountability and really helped push me into being the person that I am today. And I'm not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but I do care about, a lot of things. And it really has helped me develop personally and professionally in not only business, but also the nonprofit work and helping others. Right. So the lessons that I learned helped me to continue serving and make a difference in people's lives. And I think that's pretty cool.
No, it is. It is. And you're right. At 19, you wouldn't have had the patience to do that, or the understanding that sometimes you have to suck it up.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
So tell me something. I want to shift gears a little bit. Tell me about how you met your wife, because you were dating someone prior and you came home. Clearly that didn't work out.
No. And again, God's plan.
Yeah.
She's a great person. She's got a beautiful family. And I wish her nothing but happiness. It just didn't work out for us, and that's fine.
Yeah.
So it was like August 17th. I was actually at a wedding for a buddy's sister. Right. And it was local. It was just down the street. It was at a local venue, but the wedding ended at 8:00. Now, mind you, I'm 22 years old, fresh, was it 22 or 21? No, I must've been 21. This is 2007. So this is shortly, was it 2001 or 7? Maybe it was 2008. I think it was August of 2008. And, so the wedding goes on, and they're like, all right, we're out of here. And I'm like, I'm primed up. I'm looking good. I'm in a suit. I'm not going home. Right. I'm single. I'm going to the bar. So I go to the local watering hole, which was Lou and Carl's. It's where everyone went in our town. And again, being, 4 years out of high school or something like that, when you go in there, it's nothing but high fives. Just high five, and you go down the gauntlet, you see all your friends. And I'd already had a couple, so I'm feeling loosey-goosey and feeling good about myself. And I walked to the back and said hi to some friends. And they're like, hey, you see that girl you walked past in the, when you walked in? I was like, her right there in the Abercrombie shirt? She goes, yeah. I said, what about her? She goes, well, she thinks you're hot. I was like, at the time I didn't consider, I just got here. There's no way she thinks I'm hot. She doesn't even know who the hell I am.
Right.
That was enough for me, though, right? So I beelined it straight to her, and I was like, hey, what's going on? And her friends had drug her out of the house, right? She didn't want to go. She had just, she was in the process of finishing her degree. She is an incredibly hard worker. So she put her nose down. She's got a plan. She is graduating college. There was no bullshit. There was no time for guys. I'm getting a job. I'm going to make, $80,000 by the time that I turned, I don't know what it was. She's always been super goal oriented, right? But having a man in her life was not part of that plan.
Right.
And she still to this day reminds me of that. She said, thanks for screwing up my plans. Now it's more like, thanks for screwing up my plans. But so it's, so I went over there and we sat down, and I was in the mood to party, and I never even ordered a drink. I sat down, we struck up a conversation, and we talked until the lights came on and the bar closed. And I walked her to her car, and there was a spider in there, and it scared her. So she kind of jumped towards me, and I took that opportunity to kiss her, and I was hooked. That was pretty much the end of that. Now, like I said, she wasn't looking for anyone. And so I was very, what is the word I'm looking for here? Adamant. I wasn't letting her out of my sight.
Right.
I was persistent is the word I was looking for. And sooner or later she caved. She gave me another shot. Right. But I was trying to do the whole, you don't text for 3 days kind of thing. And so in my head, I'm like, this is dumb, man. I just want to text her. I had a great time talking to her. I'm not allowed to text her for 3 days.
Right. You got the rules that you have to follow.
Yeah. So I'm trying to follow the rules. And so I finally text her, and I'm like, hey, she's like, oh, 3 days later, now you want to talk to me? I'm like, damn it. So she's funny about it. She's got a great sense of humor and personality. Still wasn't looking for, a guy though. And I just kind of kept pushing, and sooner or later, she'd give me a shot. We'd go hang out and talk, and just kept making me want more. She's incredible. It was not a rocky start. But I don't think that either one of us really knew what we wanted in the beginning. And every time that we'd take a very short break, it just made us realize how much we appreciated each other's time. And the relationship that I had with her in the beginning is certainly not the relationship that we have now. I mean, I liked her and loved her before, but I have the absolute utmost respect for her now. I mean, being my teammate in life, being the mother of my children, we complement each other so well in so many different ways. I couldn't imagine not being with her, you know? Yeah. In fact, it's one of those things like a friend of their family named Basil told me at our wedding day, he said, the key to love is to live knowing that it can be lost. And that really resonates for me. You know, it's easy to say you love something, but when you actually sit down and you be like, man, like that could be taken away from me at any moment.
Yeah.
It really makes you sit down and appreciate it. I mean, it's funny because like, you know, over the course of, we've been together 16 years now, which in my mind is wild. Our 11th wedding anniversary was October 19th of this year. And, so not too long ago, but, yeah, just the blessings that, you know, she's given me in my life, the patience that she has to put up with my BS and, you know, but also the grit that she has to be able to duck down and, you know, neither one of us are too good to do anything. There's no roles that, you know, we wouldn't take, but yeah, man, marrying her was single-handedly the best decision of my life. There's no doubt about it. You know, I can say that with a smile on my face. That's for sure.
and you are.
And I am. Yeah, I got a pretty big smile on my face about it. No, but she is awesome. She's everything. She's determined. She's motivated. She's driven. She's always got goals. She's always the hardest worker in the room, and you know she's probably the most vocal person in the room too, being able to speak up not only for herself but others as well. There's just a lot of things that I love about her, and you know I just still can't get enough of her, chasing her around the house as often as I can.
There you go. You have to do that.
That's a fact.
And that's resulted in two kids?
2 beautiful kids.
Yeah.
Yep. You know, and we struggled to have kids. In fact, we tried for 2 years. A quick cool story about God's plan is, you know, I already told you, like growing up, I have 2 brothers, 1 sister. I have a ton of cousins though, ton of cousins and second cousins. I mean, when we go to family reunion, there's 50, 60 people there. So my childhood was awesome in the fact that like we had an entire hockey team of nothing but family with cousins and second cousins and, you know, a couple really close friends that were like cousins. So yeah, anytime that we'd go to family reunions at the pond, I mean, the holidays were always crazy growing up. We had the biggest parties for Thanksgiving and Christmas. You know, if there was a birthday party, everyone was always invited. So growing up, like I had a ton of friends because of sports and school, but I also had a ton of close family because of that. And so in my head, when it came to building our own family, I really wanted that same thing for my kids. I wanted to have, you know, 4 kids, and I wanted my other siblings to have tons of kids so that we could all, you know, have a bunch of family running around and terrorizing it, and they could do what we did growing up.
Yeah.
That was honestly my goal. That's what I wanted. And Sarah was like, absolutely not. In fact, we broke up. One of the times that we broke up was because she said that she didn't want kids. And I said, well, I have to. It's in my life's plan. Like I have to have kids. There's no way I can't be a father. I didn't know what that meant at the time.
Right.
But she's like, well, you're not getting 4. She's like, I could settle for 2. And you know, to her credit, you know, with the divorce rate being what it is these days and how easy it is, just with social media, majority of our friends are all divorced. There's very few and far between that have stuck it out as long as we have. And she didn't want that first. She didn't want to be a single mom, and I can't blame her, you know, and thankfully that just isn't the case for us. Not now. And hopefully not ever. But yeah, we tried for 2 years, and looking back, it's funny because, you know, with IVF and, the medications trying to make it happen, it was all due to stress. When I say like she was a hard worker, I'm telling you, like that woman worked for Marriott hotels at the time, 60-hour weeks, but she was salary. So she was making a 40-hour paycheck, constantly trying to climb the ladder with the next resume builder. And she was an event coordinator. She did weddings. The amount of weddings that she do in a single year was insane, taking crap from everyone, but then still have to do the hotel responsibilities. And it was insane. But she just had a really rough go with the employer, and there was no support. They fired the food and beverage director, so she was in charge of food and beverage as the catering director, and then they didn't have the staff. Again, it's 2008, right?
Right.
And so, or no, it's not 2008 at that time. We're married. We're trying to have kids. This is like 2014. Actually, I'm sorry. At this moment, we've been trying, but it's actually closer to 2015 because Zoe was born in 2016. Mm-hmm. And we had already had the conversation, like, we make enough money. I'm working. I have a great job. We own a home at the time, which the market these days is just insane. The house that we got for $150,000 at the time in its condition would probably go for $3 million now. Like, it's absolutely doubled in value. But, as everything was manageable, like, we could make it, and I have your back, period, end, and it's going to be fine. But you need to quit your job because A, you're miserable, and B, like, it's not healthy, the amount of stress that she was under.
Yeah.
So she had my full support, but she felt too obligated to actually pull the trigger and quit the job because she felt an obligation to provide as well. Like, she's not, there's no quit in this woman.
Right.
It's just another reason why I love her. But, and I hope that if my kids listen to this, I hope that they can genuinely see how much I care for their mother. I mean, she's incredible. They are very lucky to have her as their mom. I just stopped and I completely lost my train of thought where I was.
No, so she
important.
She needed to quit her job.
She needed to quit her job. So she called me a couple times, crying prior to, and I mean, over the period of time, just about how bad it was and the no support and the things that they were doing to her. And one of the straws was she completely pulled this event like out of her ass and made everything happen. Well, someone screwed up the order and they didn't have her alcohol. So she went to the store and purchased it and obviously expensed it for that thing. And then they were like, well, you can't just go and buy alcohol for this event. And be like, it was on the list. You guys didn't do your jobs. I made it happen. No harm, no foul. Like, they got charged. Like, what is the problem? And they basically told her that she was like a failure, and she was just devastated because in her mind, it was a home run for the weekend. Like, she had no staff. She had 3 weddings that she single-handedly, did on her own with her crew. And I said, Sarah, I love you. I said, but I don't want you calling me again in tears saying how bad it is when I've already given you the green light to quit your job. I said, we're fine, and I don't want to hear anything else about it. I said, I know you have a resignation letter. I said, go turn it in right now. Don't even think twice. Just do it. And so she did. She's like, okay. And she did. And she was pregnant a month later. I mean, it's, and the cool story about all of that though, is, when we found out, we waited until Christmas to tell the family. Right. And, shortly after we had told them, it was the end of January that my brother Justin and his wife had announced that they were expecting. And so now the cousins are close in age.
Yeah.
All of me and my cousins were literally 1 year apart. Like, and it just goes down the line. All of us. It's wild. There's like 15 of us that are just like super, super close in age. And so God's plan was working. And then, we had, Sarah got pregnant with Levi, our second, and then my brother Chris announced that they were having a son, and they got Colt, and then we had Mia, and then Chloe came along, and next thing you know, we got Layla, and now Renly, and so like there's just this big family of a bunch of grandkids, and Deacon, don't let me forget Deacon. Deacon passed, so Wade was actually a twin, and I'd love to see what he'd be up to these days. But blessed with a huge family, and God's plan was that they were going to be close in age. It just wasn't on my timeline.
Right.
And that's totally cool, man.
Rarely is.
Yeah, that's a fact, but it's one of those things where it's allowing yourself to kind of step back, and especially in my faith, you can't be in control. And majority of the times where I've failed in life, it's because I had to have control of the situation rather than just trusting his plan.
Right.
And, so yeah, I'm very thankful for that. So family life, we got the kids. I'm working at the Department of Justice. Some health things come along. I'm a disabled vet by definition, according to the VA, for a whole host of injuries, primarily the TBI, my back. You got hearing loss and tinnitus and all the other ones from the gunfire and
all the bonus stuff.
Yeah, all the bonus stuff, the freebies, if you will.
Yeah.
But because of that, I'm rated at 100%, and I was offered a medical retirement at the Department of Justice. So I had worked there 9 years, and it wasn't an easy decision, but it kind of was, just based on the fact that, you know, the little bit of retirement that they would give me from the prison would help cover, you know, just normal everyday financial costs along with my disability, that I was able to work less hours doing something else and, you know, provide and all of the things. Not only that, but, you know, I medically retired in 2018 when my son was born. So the day that my son was born, I went on maternity leave and I just never went back to work.
Right.
I had all of my paperwork ready and I walked in, I submitted it, and she's like, you can't just like turn in a retirement packet. Like there's a process. And I was like, no, I understand. I had Jennings. He already went through the process. And so he had kind of coached me and helped me fill out the paperwork in advance. And they're like, no. You got to have a doctor's evaluation. It's got to be in a specific format with a letter, and you got to have medical documentation. I said, I'm aware. I said, it's all right here. She's like, what? And she opens it up. She's like, oh my God. She's like, she's like, but how? She's like, no, never mind. She's like, okay. She's like, well, I will submit this up. And I retired officially within 5 weeks, which was the fastest anyone's ever medically retired out of FCI Milan. Again, thanks to Jeff Jennings. If it wasn't for Jennings, I don't know where I would be today. Just the guidance that man has provided, and the support over the course of my lifetime since meeting him has been incredible. Got to give the shout outs, but, yeah. So unlike a lot of father figures, I had 3 months of FMLA that I got to spend with Zoe when she was born. And again, you know, being such a great teammate with my wife, or team with my wife, she had to be up in the middle of the night to pump. Right. And so she let me sleep because she had to be up anyway. So she would get up, she'd pump, she'd feed Zoe. And then, you know, I would sleep through the night, and then I would get up during the day, and she'd be able to sleep during the day. And it was a beautiful situation, you know, very blessed to be able to have that opportunity. So when Levi came along, I was already home, and we kind of undertook a larger project at the time. So I medically retired. Levi's born. Sarah's home on FMLA, and we decided to build a 900 square foot addition on our house. And
why not?
And I'm going to do it.
Why not?
Yeah, because all of a sudden I got the time, right?
Right.
So we. I work and coordinate with my neighbor across the street, a really good friend of ours, Pat Gardner. He's, you know, absolutely an uncle to our kids. He's incredible. He's awesome. But anyways, he's not a jack of all trades. He's an expert in everything he does. And so I had hired him to help me do everything. So like, all right, so the first step is to lay it out. Then you got to dig footings, and you got to pour concrete, then you got to lay block, and then you got to, like, you know, build your subframe and your floors and blah, blah, blah. And so every step of the way, he would say, okay, this is how you do it, and this is how it's got to be done. And he would help me, and then I'd finish it, and I'd get an inspection. Good to go. One of the biggest ones was laying the block. You know, so we dug the footings, and the first time that the guy came out to do the inspection, you know, this 5'7" bulldog of a man jumps out of this big truck, and I'm like, oh shit, here we go. He jumps out. I'm like, hey, what's going on? Completely walks right past me. Hey, is all I get. He goes and he looks at the pins that I put in the foundation of the existing house. And he's like, did you do this work? I said, yeah. I was like, my buddy's helping me build it. I was like, he told me this is how it had to be done. I was like, it's backfilled with hydraulic cement. He's like, oh, you did this? I said, yeah. And he goes, this looks awesome. I'm like, oh man. So, you know, it turns out he was a huge supporter of vets. You know, he's a brother in Christ. And before you knew it, you know, I'm approving permits by text with pictures. Right. Just another awesome situation. Gave me tons of cool pointers. The house project was a lot. I mean, I laid block for an entire month in the dead of July, like 101, 105 some days. Just the craziest workouts that I've ever had in my entire life with that mentality, just blaring music. And, you know, family stepped up in a big way. My mother-in-law was constantly there watching the kids so that Sarah could rest and I could work and what have you. But in the end, we were able to build a beautiful home, you know, for my family, and the kids got the rooms they deserve. We got a huge, great room so that, you know, it's perfect for entertaining, and it's very welcoming. You know, it reminds me of my childhood home. Yeah. When we were 16, we had bought my grandparents' place, and my dad had built, it's like 1,800, just 2,000 square foot house. We built a house on top of a house, basically, is what happened. And, Yeah, I mean, that's another whole long story of eating Little Caesars pizza, because it was in the dead of winter a lot of times, so you didn't even have to refrigerate it. You showed up and you ate the cold pizza that was sitting on the counter or on the floor, or wherever we had at the time. But no, being able to, be there in every moment with them as a father is something that not everyone gets the opportunity to do. And for me, that's huge. My kids are my best friends. I call them the roommates. Yeah. They're my little homies. But we do everything together, and even during the midst of COVID, people were scared to leave their houses. And in my opinion, like ever since we had Zoe, like she went everywhere with me. If we were going to the grocery store, it wasn't an inconvenience. It was just the new way, right. And so we went everywhere. We did everything. And to this day, I mean, later down the road, we opened up a craft company. So the kids are involved in that. They help us do some painting or organizing or whatever little things that they can do. Like they're involved in the family business. Then we opened up a travel agency in 2022 because we didn't make enough money doing crafting to travel. That was the whole purpose, right? We opened up Mickus Home Creations so that we could make money and travel. Again, my wife's idea. She's incredible. And then we opened up a travel agency, went down this crazy rabbit hole after figuring out how expensive travel actually was. So we opened up the travel agency, and now there are little reps, and they're talking to people about cruises. But again, because we did everything together, we do everything together. Like we hold them to a very high standard. We're super chill. Don't get me wrong, but there is expectations of pulling your own weight and working as a team. Our hashtag or our motto is Team Mickus. Uh-huh. And we live and die by it. You don't do anything. You don't have to do anything alone. You know that you've always got the support, but you are expected to do, your responsibilities. And because they do that, they're the most well-behaved kids in the area. Like you don't have to ask them twice most times. They're still kids. They're still kids for sure. But because they're responsible and they conduct themselves accordingly in public, like we get to do a lot of cool stuff, right? Like we're constantly on airplanes going to different, my kids have seen more countries than I told you the first time I got on a plane, I was 19 heading to basic. Right. Levi was 5? He was 5 years old and we went to Mexico. Like that's a rough life, kid. Yeah. But the car seat, backpacks, the giant, just having to travel and pack everything. And it wasn't an inconvenience. It was just the new thing you had to do in order to accomplish your mission. Yeah. And, in the airports, they're good. They got their carry on and they're rolling it. And they know that they know where they have to be when we're walking in the airport. They got to be in front of us or between us. So they know that if they're walking in a parking lot, then they stay to our right-hand side so that they're not in the middle of traffic. I mean, it's just little things that you instill. But again, I can't speak for other people's families, but I know that when we go out, we don't have to worry about a lot of things. And a lot of people that I know do not go out because they're constantly worried about those things. Right. And so I'm glad that we kind of set the precedence. My wife and I are on the same page as far as, do these things and we get to do more fun things. Yeah. Set the expectation and then drive the standard home. That's fact. So you have, just to recap, you have sort of built the life that was modeled by your parents right up into the home that you've built. Oh yeah. You had a career at the Department of Justice. You get done with that. You have children. You decide you're going to open up a craft company, but you're not making enough money to travel. So you open up a travel agency. Mm-hmm. And you're traveling and you're not busy enough. So you get involved in this nonprofit organization that I want to talk a little bit about too. Yeah. So Veterans Connected, going back to military service, there was a lot of highs and lows due to a chemical imbalance in my brain from the traumatic brain injury. And it's manageable, right? I got put on medication for it to stop the highs and the lows, and it really made a huge difference. It really did. The problem with any kind of medication is that there's still side effects, right? And they're not really side effects. They're just effects of the drug. Right. And one of those were that it keeps you level, but my entire life I've been a happy-go-lucky, energetic guy. So when I'm no longer reaching those highs where, it's not even really for me. Like one of the greatest things that I think I love about myself is how excited I get about other people succeeding, right? Giving other people the encouragement to be at their best and just kind of play some sort of small role in their success, even if that's just encouraging them to take the next step. And so that excitement that I used to get, that high that I would ride from building people up, was just kind of gone. I didn't have like those high highs anymore. And so it kept me from having the depression, but I wasn't reaching that impact potential or even really happy with myself, and so to speak. So, before I got put on the medication though, I was suicidal and I had lost some friends. I've lost 5 friends to suicide. 1 is too many. 5 just eats at you. Right. And especially when you're going through those hard times, it's, you don't feel like anyone can relate. You're misunderstood. As I had mentioned, for me, I didn't have any reason to feel that way. And from my perspective, I come from a great family. I have 2 beautiful kids. I have an amazing wife. But in 2018, when my son was born and I medically retired, there was just so many things that went on. We dove all in, and I'll tell you what, man, my marriage is, I'm so thankful for my marriage and my wife's patience and just the things that we've been able to accomplish together as a team. I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought exactly where we're going at this again, but we weren't busy enough. So we decided to open up a travel agency to travel. And, now we got sports and all the things. And having lost my friends to suicide, I had already been not part of this organization, Veterans Connected, but I had, attended their Ruck to Live events, different functions that they would have, supporting veterans in our community. But just so you're aware, Veterans Connected is a 501c3 charitable organization that provides camaraderie support, financial assistance, and at the heart of our mission is suicide prevention, right? Basically what we try to do is give people a hand up and reduce the stressors in lives so that they're not put in those situations where they feel helpless and they can find their purpose and, become a productive member of society, right? We don't want anyone to feel like they're left behind or forgotten about, right? So in 2019, 27% of people in our community weren't eligible for any type of assistance because either they didn't serve in a wartime, they weren't registered with the VA or whatever happened, whatever have you. But one of the biggest issues for people getting help is the way that bylaws are written, right? So organizations have to follow specific rules. And because of that, there's a lot of people that were just hung out to dry. And so our bylaws were written in a way that we can kind of bypass that red tape and help people in their time of need and not be confined by the fine print. So 5 people sat around a table at a Bible study one day and decided to do something about the problem. And, here we are 5 years later, and we've given away over $650,000 in, assistance to people in our community and outside of our state. It's really something amazing to be part of. I mean, the lives that we've changed, and it's not our work. Our common prayer is, God send us the right people at the right time to do your work through our hands. And obviously all glory would go to him. But the impact, the personal relationships that we've built, seeing firsthand the difference that we're making in people's lives is just, it's incredible. It really is. And then in 2022, at the end of 2022, I became the chairman of the Ruck to Live initiative, which is a suicide prevention ruck march and patriotic walk. So every September we get together, we raise a lot of money, and we honor and remember veterans and now civilians that have taken their lives by suicide at this event. So we ruck a mile, we ruck 8 miles in total, but every mile we stop and there's a small memorial set up where the family members are in attendance and they speak on their loved one's behalf. And then a little bit about how it's affected them, just to try and open up conversations amongst the group, to get people thinking and create the conversations that lead to change and lead to impact. Since we started this event, the proceeds benefit, either different veterans organizations or fund our mission. It funds Reboot Recovery, which is a 12-week trauma course. There's 3 different aspects. You've got first responder, you've got combat, and then you've got general trauma. And so, we need money for that because it provides a space for the healing or the training, the classes, provides daycare, and it provides a meal. Mm-hmm. So it tries, again, when we talk about hand up and trying to relieve the stressors of everyday lives, like we sincerely mean it. And so, yeah, it's a great event. 4 people have come to us so far and said, because of the conversations that we had during this event, it gave us the courage to choose life. And that's huge, man. I mean, it's not mission complete, but that is an absolute win. It's an absolute battle win. Yeah. And so, yeah, I mean, suicide prevention is at the heart of my advocacy, and I've learned a lot, and I haven't always learned them the right ways. I mean, when you're in a situation of struggling and your friends are struggling, you do everything that you can, what you think is right, to try and help them. I mean, the things that I've done, and not just me, but friends as well, going through cleaning the apartments when all the signs are there, all the beer bottles, and I mean, just picking up trash and the attitudes and the comments, and looking back, I should have just handcuffed them to myself and went straight to the hospital. I've personally been involved in trying to help 2 of my friends, and it just didn't pan out. I mean, I called the police. I had the police show up. Oh yeah, he's fine. He's there with his daughter. He ended up, hanging himself that night. Another buddy of mine, I thought he was on the up and up. I mean, we had plans. We were going to the gym together. He was doing great with his girlfriend. The apartment was clean. Like, he was on track. I'm getting status updates and progress reports. And then come to find out, he just stopped responding one day, and he was at a wedding, came home after a great evening with his girlfriend, locked himself in the bathroom and blew his head off. I mean, you can't accept personal responsibility for those kinds of things. And I've struggled with those losses for several years. And you learn a lot from them,
Well, I think we're taught, a lot of times we're taught that, here's these signs that are there when someone's going to do this, look for these things. And I think what I have learned in burying at least one person every year since I got back, is that, especially with veterans, there aren't the signs aren't there. You didn't miss something. There wasn't something you didn't do. They were going to do it. And I think that's the important thing with organizations like yours and others, is that there's a level of professional help that can help these folks, if they're willing to take advantage of it. And I think your organization helps bring that to the surface, so that maybe someone who's thinking about this, maybe they go on that ruck march. When you say the 4 people that have come to you and said, this changed me, it reminds me of the story of the guy who's walking down the beach, and there's thousands of starfish that have washed up. Something happened, and all these starfish are on the beach. He's walking down the beach, and he's throwing these starfish back in the water. Someone comes up to him and says, "The hell are you doing?" And the guy says, "Well, I'm throwing these starfish back in the water. I'm going to save their lives." And the guy says, "There's thousands of starfish out here. What you're doing doesn't matter." And the guy picks up a starfish, throws it in the water, and says, "It mattered to that one." And I think that's what we do, right? Yeah. We can't fix everybody. No. But those 4 people who didn't do it, that mattered. Yeah. That mattered to them and their families.
Absolutely. And the veterans and civilians, as I mentioned, mental health affects everybody.
Yes.
And, everybody needs support. And there's one thing that I've learned, especially in my time with Veterans Connected and serving others after serving with the military, is that, mental health and trauma doesn't discriminate. Doesn't matter if you're, male, female, what age you are, it's coming, and, or what your background in trauma is. And so, for that reason, this year specifically, we made the conscious effort to include everybody. We partnered with schools, we partnered with local organizations, some nationally, really just trying to spread faith, hope, and love. Letting them know that you're not forgotten, you are cared about, you are worthy, you do matter, you are enough. All the lies that we're told that lead to suicide, they're just that, they're lies. You are so much more than the crap that we're, constantly told about ourselves, or the stereotypes. One of the cool things that we do at the events is, or what we did at one of them, So we had these cars brought in. We had a big car crusher, right? And we had 2 vehicles brought in white. And we had a ton of Sharpie markers, and on these vehicles, you were supposed to write something that you identify with or something that you struggle with. So you'll see a lot of them where, it should have been me. I shouldn't be alive today. I'm dumb. I'm fat. I'm ugly. I'm whatever it is that you're telling yourself in your head,
whatever that internal dialogue is.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's making you uncomfortable or depressed. Like, write that shit on there, and then we're going to crush the hell out of it. Mm-hmm. And that's what we did, man. We rucked for 8 miles. We remembered a lot of families. And then we came back and we crushed those stereotypes. And that's honestly what it's about. It's about breaking the barriers. One thing that I was really, really proud of, at this past event, my dad being the Marine, right? So my dad's on the board with us as well. He's actually the vice president, and he is the man's man. He's still out there. He's building decks. He's fixing people's houses. He's the one working with the hands. We all chip in and do this, and that's where he leads the most. But during our break, where we were about halfway done with the 8 miles, we just kind of had a moment of reflection, right? And I wanted to try something new. And so I proposed, everyone gather around, grab yourself some water, change your socks, grab some snacks. And we just sat on the back of the trailer, and there was probably 70 of us or so that were gathered around. It was actually one of the lowest turnouts simply based on weather. It was supposed to rain all that day. So only half of the registered people actually attended the event. Wow. But we don't ask for the most, we ask for the right ones.
Right.
And the ones that needed it showed up. And so we all gathered around, and I was just like, hey, I'm going to be real with you guys. We've never done this before, but we want to try something new. I said, we all know that the conversations that happen at this event are what drive change. I said, so I just want to open it up to everybody to kind of speak what's on your heart. And I said, and I'll start. I'm going to just kind of break the ice. I said, my name is Brandyn Mickus. I serve with Veterans Connected as a way to give back to others. Suicide prevention is at the heart of my advocacy. I've struggled personally with mental health. And if I can be a light to others after losing, so many of my friends, I said, that's what I'm here for. I said, every year that we've done this, we've literally recognized a friend of mine that we've lost. Mm-hmm. We've Clayton, Chris Goki, Command Sergeant Major Folsom. You name it. And I've lost a lot of civilian friends to suicide too, that worked either in corrections or what have you. But the loss is real. The effects are real, and you have to get the stuff off your chest. As I told you, I've got a great friend named Troy Licata that we keep in contact with daily, with Snapchat. And like that man in the mirror stuff is real. It is so important to talk just out loud, even if it's just like acknowledging what's going on in your own life, vocally to a phone, right. That's going to someone else. Right. And they don't even need to respond. It's just the fact that you got it off your chest. But I said, I've struggled with this, and, now is the time if anyone wants to say anything about something that they've struggled with or friends that they've lost. And so people just started opening up, and before you knew it, like, people were chomping at the bit to get to the opportunity to say their piece. And my dad spoke up, and I wasn't expecting that. My dad is the badass, the hard ass, and growing up, he was an incredible father, but he most certainly had the, sit down, shut up, suck it up, right. Do the work, let's go. And he said, my entire life I've been told, that it's our job to just, as men, to sit down, suck it up, and just eat it. He's like, it's about time that we end that. He's like, we don't need to sit down and shut up. Now we need to talk it out. Yeah. And to hear that coming out of his mouth is like, man, like, mind blown. The impact is made. Just to see the kind of person that he's became after retirement and having the grandkids. He was always a great dad. He was always there, and, the hardest worker I've ever met. But to see him kind of soften up a little bit with the grandkids and take on this new role within Veterans Connected alongside of us, is really humbling and awesome to watch. He became closer to God, and, man, he's a blessing in a lot of people's lives. So with Veterans Connected, we do all kinds of things. A lot of times it's just paying down bills, giving people that kind of financial relief. I mean, that's why we raise the money, right? Yeah. We do a lot of things, making sure that people's homes are safe, whether that's with a deck or handrails. We'll do some small home projects. We've done some very large home projects. Did a complete home makeover. There was like 317 logged hours. There was a couple different companies that came through. I don't even know, 50, 60 volunteers. I know personally I worked like 40 hours one week and then about another 20 some odd hours the next week putting on a roof. And I've always enjoyed working with my hands. I get that from my dad. And after I retired, I worked in construction for a couple of years, but I'll be honest with you, like that type of work in my service, issues, like my back, it just kills me. Anything overhead and I'm down. Right, and so I can do it. My body doesn't like it though. But no, the difference that we can make in people's lives is incredible. And in all honesty, like we have all of the support from the people in our community. We are so blessed with the businesses and the relationships. Everyone always steps up. We're certainly not lacking support, but it is awareness, right? We're there for a common purpose, and everyone loves the purpose once they find out about us. We just got to get them to know about us.
So that brings me to a question. If someone wants to find out more about Veterans Connected, where do they go?
So you can find us online, www.veteransconnected.org. It's easy to donate. There's several different ways. You can find us on, it's all on our website. You can also message us on social media. We're on Facebook and Instagram. Soon to be on TikTok. That's a role that I'm going to have to take over, and I just haven't. I'm not a social media person, but I'm doing my best.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's ample opportunities to volunteer and to serve. We're a small board. We're only a board of 4 members. We're all unpaid, and then we have one event coordinator, Barb, who is a veteran spouse, and she's incredible. We do a lot during the year. Our biggest ones are the Ruck to Live. We've got the Victory for Veterans dinner, which is a huge dinner benefit to raise money for our mission for the year. We do a 5K. We do a women's night out for women veterans, and we have our Adopt a Soldier program in December, which is kind of it's turned into like a volunteer appreciation / just loving on families, that are in need. We get some good sponsors where it usually doesn't cost us a dime. But yeah, we're able to make such a huge impact in a positive way in people's lives. Again, just furthering the mission, just showing people that they're not forgotten about and that they're loved. It really has been a huge blessing to be part of, but make no mistake about it. Like there is a lot of work. And if it wasn't for me being medically retired, there's no way that I would have been able to put in the amount of time and effort, that I have to make, these things possible together as a team. And I think again, like that's one thing that, I really love about our organization. Aside from being all unpaid, we're all just volunteers trying to make a difference in people's lives. And that really resonates with people who are donating because their dollars go further. They know that when they give to us, they're actually giving through us, and they're directly impacting, someone's life. We take care of veterans and their families. And we provide wheelchairs for veterans' families, for kids that couldn't get funding or the assistance that they needed. We have the largest medical closet in Livingston County. So, and it's open to everybody, not just veterans and their families. So it's like, we're just constantly trying to do good by people and do right. That's all. And who wouldn't want to be a part of something great like that?
Yeah, no doubt. So veteransconnected.org is where they can go check all that out.
Yes, sir.
Well, we have talked quite a bit today, and I've learned a lot about you that I didn't know. And I'm really glad to have heard your story and the things that you've done, and the life that you're leading now is amazing. And I think there's going to be even more amazing things. As we come to a close during this interview, though, I always ask a question, and the question is, 100 years from now, when someone's listening to this story, what would you like for them to take away from our conversation, and more importantly, from your life?
If in looking back, like I said earlier, if my kids listen to this or family or friends, I hope that they know that I love them. Mm-hmm. I hope that they see the things that I do, the way that I act, the way I respond, the things that we do together as a family, or even relationally as friends or acquaintances. It's all in love. I've had tons of support growing up. ample opportunities, and the reality is not everyone has that. And so, as we talked, there's several reasons why maybe I shouldn't be here today, but I am. And so it's easy for me to live a life of gratitude knowing that, there's a lot of reasons why I shouldn't be here. And so, yeah, I'm just a guy. I love God. I've been given ample opportunities to raise a beautiful family and have an incredible marriage. It's just the people that I come across, it seems like God's given me this opportunity to create impact. And I mean, it's honestly something as simple as like walking into Kroger and watching people walk with their head down. And in all honesty, like the world at this time and place it's crazy, right? It's pretty chaotic. It's an election year. It's always nuts. But we're still just people every single day in, day out. We all need love. We all need support and encouragement. And so like, I am that guy. As we're walking by, if I see you with your head down, I'm going to ask you how your day is going. Yeah. And when you don't acknowledge me, I'm going to ask you again, how are you doing? And then I'm going to go for a high five, right? Just really get you out of your comfort zone. The amount of times that I've stopped and made people laugh, like I remember pulling up to a stoplight and there's this sweet old lady who just looked, she was stressed out. She was in a white Escape, windows up, just 10 and 2. And I'm in my truck and I'm just feeling myself. I'm having a great day. The sun's shining. Like there's no reason to be down. So I rolled in my window and then she kind of makes eye contact. So I do the old school roll your window down thing. And so she kind of panics. She looks over me. It's like, you want to race? I mean, now mind you, this woman is like dialed up to the 9. She's clearly in her like late 70s, maybe early 80s. And she is just so dumbfounded that she had that slow moving from like what's going on to like this huge perma smile, and then she let out this huge belt of laughter, right? And I was like, have a great day, and I drove off. I would encourage everybody to try to make that kind of impact in people's lives, and it was something so simple. It was just a joke, but you can ask people how their day is going. You can just tell them, I hope something good happens to you today. We need more love and kindness in this world. And if you can be an avenue to create that kind of impact, then I encourage you to do so. And that's what I try and do with my life. All
right. I see you're building quite a legacy, for your family and yourself and for the people around you. So we appreciate that.
Yeah. It's honestly, it's a gift that I've been afforded the opportunity to do. So if I don't do it, I feel like I'm failing myself.
Yeah. Well, thanks for taking time out of your busy life to come sit here and talk with us for a couple hours. We really appreciate it.
Sir, I sincerely appreciate this opportunity and everything that you're doing to capture these stories for veterans. You and I had talked briefly about this in passing, but after going through this experience, man, I would absolutely encourage every veteran that has the opportunity to relive their story. There's so many periods of my life that we've touched on that I haven't spoken about in years, reliving those memories. And as we talked about, like I can still smell the JP8, from the motor pool refueling or the crisp air from the trainings or the sunlight hitting my neck with my kids on my shoulders as we're watching the parades, all the little gifts in life, that we typically take for granted because we're so busy just moving at 120 mile an hour. We just got to slow it down. And really take in all the good times and, be grateful in both good times and bad. And just love each other.
Thank you for listening to the Veterans Archives podcast, where every veteran story is honored and celebrated. Join us as we explore the rich histories and experiences of those who have served our nation. You can catch our podcasts on all major podcast platforms, as well as every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Wreaths Across America Radio. At Veterans Archives, we believe your story matters. Visit our website at www.veteransarchives.org to discover more about our mission, access resources for veterans, and stay updated on upcoming episodes. Connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn to engage with our community. Subscribe, like, and share to spread awareness about our veterans' stories. Whether you're a veteran, a supporter, or simply curious about the profound journeys of those who have served, Veterans Archives invites you to listen in, learn, and be inspired. Join us as we continue to honor and preserve the legacies of our veterans. Remember, your story matters. Visit us online today at www.veteransarchives.org and connect with us on social media and stay informed and engaged. And as always, thank you for your support.